The phone call came at 10:47 p.m., 11 hours before I was supposed to walk down the aisle at the Riverside Gardens venue. I was in my hotel room, wedding dress hanging on the closet door, when the coordinator's panicked voice shattered my pre-wedding calm. "Ms. Walker, I'm so sorry, but your venue has been canceled. Your father called this afternoon and canceled everything. The ceremony space, the reception hall, the catering. He said there would be no wedding tomorrow." I sat down hard on the bed, my hands suddenly numb. That's impossible. He can't cancel my wedding. He was listed as the primary contact since he put down the initial deposit. He had all the confirmation numbers. "I'm so sorry, but we've already booked another event for tomorrow afternoon. There's nothing we can do." I hung up and immediately called my father. He answered on the second ring, and I could hear the TV blaring in the background, probably watching sports with my brother as usual. "What did you do?" I whispered. "Finally came to my senses is what I did," he said, not even pretending to misunderstand. "You're too ugly for a big wedding anyway, Iris. 200 guests, a garden venue? Who are you trying to fool?" My mother's voice chimed in, speakerphone, of course. She laughed, that sharp, bitter sound I'd heard my whole life. "Save the money for your sister's real wedding. When Chloe gets married, it'll be worth celebrating. She's actually pretty enough to deserve it." "My wedding is tomorrow," I said, my voice shaking. "The guests are flying in. Everything is paid for." "Was paid for," Dad corrected. "I got most of the deposits back. Amazing what you can do when you're the one who paid. Oh, that reminds me, I canceled the photographer too, and the flowers, and that ridiculous string quartet. You're not even paying for this wedding. James and I paid for everything ourselves." "With whose help?" Dad's voice turned nasty. "Who co-signed your venue contract because you needed to establish credit history? Who put down the deposit when you were short that first month? You needed Daddy's help then, and Daddy decided to take it back. This is illegal. This is parenting," he interrupted. "Somebody had to stop you from embarrassing yourself. Walking down that aisle like you're some princess when you look like you. At least now James can find someone in his league." Mom laughed again. "Maybe we did him a favor. He's so handsome, and you're so you." Everyone would have spent the whole wedding wondering what he was thinking. "Chloe needs a new car," Dad added. "The money from your deposits will cover a nice down payment. See, everyone wins." The line went dead. I sat in that hotel room, staring at my wedding dress. The one I'd spent months finding, the one that made me feel beautiful for the first time in my life. And didn't cry. Not yet. Because they had no idea what I'd already planned. See, this wasn't the first time they'd done something like this. When I was 16, they canceled my sweet 16 party the morning of, saying I was too awkward for a party and giving the money to Chloe for shopping. When I graduated high school as valedictorian, they skipped the ceremony to take Chloe to a modeling audition. She didn't get the job. When I got into MIT for graduate school, they told the whole family I'd probably drop out anyway, so why celebrate? But the worst was 2 years ago. I'd been selected for a prestigious engineering award, youngest woman ever to receive it. The ceremony was black tie with industry leaders from around the world. My parents RSVP'd yes, then didn't show. Later, I found out they told people I'd lied about the award because girls like Iris don't win things like that. That's when I started planning, not for revenge exactly, for freedom, for proof. And now, 11 hours before my wedding, they'd played their final card. They just didn't know I'd been holding a royal flush for 2 years. I picked up my phone and scrolled to a contact labeled insurance policy. James had thought I was paranoid when I'd insisted on this backup plan. Now he'd understand why I never trusted my family with anything important. "Maggie," I said when she answered. "It's happening." Just like I predicted. Maggie Chen owned the Celestial Ballroom, the most exclusive venue in the city. She was also my mentor's wife, and she'd been horrified when I told her about my family. 6 months ago, I put down a secret deposit for her venue as a backup, telling her to keep the date open just in case. "Oh, honey," she said. "I'm so sorry, but don't worry, we're ready. Everything you planned for, we can execute. The Celestial is yours tomorrow. And the other arrangements? Already. The videographer has the equipment set up. The social media team is on standby. Everything you asked for is in place." I hung up and made my next call, To James, my fiancé, who answered with sleep in his voice. Hey, beautiful. Too excited to sleep. They canceled our venue, I said quietly. My parents. They canceled everything. Silence. Then, those bastards. Are you okay? Do you want to postpone? We can go to the courthouse, just us. No, I said. We're getting married tomorrow. At the Celestial Ballroom. Everything's already arranged. The Celestial? But that's how. Remember when I said I had trust issues with my family? This is why. I booked a backup venue 6 months ago. Paid for it with my bonus from the Patterson project. I knew they'd try something. You gorgeous genius, he breathed. What do you need me to do? Call your side of the family. Tell them the venue changed. I'll handle my side. Iris, are you sure you want to invite them after this? I smiled, though he couldn't see it. Oh yes. I definitely want them there. The next morning was chaos, but the good kind. The Celestial Ballroom was even more beautiful than Riverside Gardens. Where the original venue had been pretty, this was breathtaking. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, windows overlooking the city skyline. The kind of place that hosted celebrity weddings and charity galas. Maggie had worked miracles overnight. My flowers were upgraded to exotic orchids. The string quartet became a full orchestra. The catering went from standard to 5-star. She called in every favor, pulled every string, and created something beyond my wildest dreams. Consider it my wedding gift, she said, squeezing my hand. That and what's about to happen. I'd texted my family the new address an hour before the ceremony, keeping the message simple. Wedding still happening, new venue. Hope you can make it. They showed up, of course. Not to support me, but to see what disaster I'd scrambled together at the last minute. I watched from the bridal suite window as they pulled up in Dad's BMW. Saw their faces when they realized where they were. The Celestial Ballroom. The venue Chloe had begged to have her Sweet 16, only to be told it was too expensive and exclusive. The place Mom had tried to book her anniversary party, only to be told they were beneath the waiting list. They walked in wearing their sneers like accessories, ready to mock whatever pathetic replacement I found. Then they saw the transformation. The flowers that cost more than their car payment, the orchestra warming up with classical pieces, the champagne fountain that actually had champagne, not sparkling wine. Chloe's mouth fell open. She was supposed to be the pretty one, the one who deserved grand things. But here she stood in her off-the-rack dress, surrounded by elegance she'd never achieved. That's when phase 2 began. Mr. and Mrs. Walker, a woman with a camera and perfect smile, approached them. I'm from City Living magazine. We're doing a feature on the wedding. Engineer bride stuns at Celestial Ballroom. Can we get a quick interview about your daughter? Dad straightened, already preening. He loved attention, loved being important. Of course, we're so proud of our Iris. Oh, I'm sorry, the reporter interrupted. I should clarify. We heard there was some confusion about the venue, something about a last-minute cancellation. His face went pale. Where did you hear that? She smiled wider. Oh, we have our sources. In fact, we have some very interesting voicemails from the Riverside Gardens about a father canceling his daughter's wedding because he thought she was too ugly for a big wedding. Can you comment on that? Mom grabbed Dad's arm. We're not commenting on anything. What about this recording? The reporter held up her phone. Dad's voice rang out clear as day. You're too ugly for a big wedding anyway. People were starting to stare. Wedding guests, my colleagues, James's family, industry leaders I'd invited, were witnessing this unraveling. That's taken out of context, Dad sputtered. What context makes that acceptable? The reporter asked. And what about the deposits you redirected? We have screenshots of text messages about using the wedding money for your other daughter's car. Is it true you stole from your daughter's wedding to buy your favorite child a vehicle? Chloe turned red. I didn't know. They just said they were buying me a car. With your sister's wedding funds, the reporter clarified. The sister who graduated MIT, who won the Morrison Engineering Award, who just landed the Tecton Industries contract. That sister, the one you called ugly. That's when they noticed the cameras. Not just the reporters, multiple cameras, positioned strategically around the entrance. The videographer I'd hired specifically for this moment. The social media team live streaming to platforms I've set up months ago. What is this? Mom hissed at me as I descended the stairs in my wedding dress. The one that fit like a dream, that made my supposedly ugly self look like royalty. This, I smiled. This is consequences. You set us up. No, I said. You canceled my wedding and stole my money. I just made sure everyone knew about it. Every single guest here is watching you right now. My colleagues, my mentors, James's family. They all know what you did. We're your parents. Dad's face was purple. You're humiliating us. You humiliated me first. The difference is, I did nothing to deserve it. The reporter stepped closer. Ms. Walker, our readers would love to know. How did you manage to book the Celestial Ballroom at the last minute? I looked directly at my parents as I answered. I've had it booked for 6 months. I knew my family would try to sabotage my wedding. They've sabotaged every important moment of my life. So this time, I was ready. You're lying, Mom whispered. The deposit alone is less than the bonus I got for the Patterson project, I said. You know, the project you told everyone I fail at. The one where you said women like me don't succeed in tech. That project is why I could afford this. My success, not yours. Chloe was crying now, mascara running. This was supposed to be my venue. For my wedding someday, you stole my dream venue. No, I said calmly. I pay for mine, with money I earned. At a job I got with a degree I completed despite your constant criticism. While you were spending my stolen wedding funds on a car. Security appeared, discreet but present. Maggie had thought of everything. I think it's time you left, I said. This is a private event and you're not welcome here. You can't throw us out, Dad roared. We're your family. Family doesn't sabotage each other. Family doesn't call each other ugly. Family doesn't steal from each other. I nodded to security. Please escort them out. As they were led away, Mom shrieking about lawsuits and disrespect, I called out one more thing. Oh, and Dad, that primary contact status to use to cancel my venue, I've already had it legally changed. You're no longer authorized on any of my accounts, and those deposits you thought you got back. Riverside Gardens called me first. I redirected them to the Celestial Ballroom. You stole nothing. His face as he realized he'd been played was worth every penny I'd spent. The wedding was perfect, better than perfect. James cried when he saw me. His family embraced me like I was precious. My colleagues toasted my success. And everyone knew my worth had nothing to do with my family's opinion. The City Living article came out 2 weeks later. Beautiful Bride Overcomes Family Cruelty was the headline. It went viral. The recording of Dad calling me too ugly for a wedding became a talking point about family emotional abuse. My story inspired others to share theirs. Chloe posted a tearful apology video that fooled no one. My parents threatened to sue until they realized I had recordings of years of abuse. They went silent after that, telling family I was dead to them. Good. I'd been dead to them my whole life anyway. The only difference was now everyone knew it. 6 months later, I got a call from Chloe. She was engaged, she said, and couldn't afford a venue. Did I have any connections? Could I help? I'm too ugly to have connections, I said. Remember? I'm sorry, she whined. I didn't mean it. I'm your sister. No, I said. You're someone who stood by while our parents destroyed every milestone in my life. You laughed when they called me ugly. You took my wedding money for a car. Sisters don't do that. So you won't help me? I'll help you the same way you helped me, which is not at all. I hung up and went back to my life, my beautiful life, with my husband who thinks I'm gorgeous, my job that values my brain, my friends who see my worth. They thought I was too ugly for a big wedding. Turns out, they were too ugly inside to be part of my beautiful life. The Celestial Ballroom still sends me Christmas cards. Maggie says I'm the bride who proved that true beauty comes from standing tall in the face of cruelty. That grace under fire is the most elegant thing you can wear. My parents, they're still telling anyone who'll listen that I ruined the family, that I'm a vindictive daughter who humiliated them for no reason. But everyone's seen the video. Everyone's heard the recording. You're too ugly for a big wedding anyway. Those 7 words destroyed them. Not because I made them public, but because they said them at all. Because they believed them. Because they acted on them. I didn't ruin my family. I just refused to let them ruin me. And that's the most beautiful revenge of all.
The fluorescent lights of the hospital hallway always seemed to hum louder at 6 a.m., a cruel soundtrack to the end of my double night shift. My feet ached inside my worn nursing shoes, and my brain felt like static. 19 years old, and I was already an expert in exhaustion. My name's Serenity. For the past 3 years, pretty much since I turned 16, I'd been stacking night shifts, first at a diner, then a grocery store, and now as a CNA. All of it, every single grueling hour, was for nursing school, my escape plan, my future. Before we move on, tell me where you're watching from. I love mapping my viewers. I pulled into the driveway, the old Honda Civic sputtering a bit before I cut the engine. It was still dark, but a faint pink was bleeding into the eastern sky. The house, our house, usually felt like a tomb at this hour. Not today. Music, loud and thumping, vibrated through the walls. Confetti glittered on the porch. My stomach tightened. I walked through the front door, the key turning silently in the lock. The living room was a whirlwind of glitter, balloons and half-eaten snacks. People I vaguely recognized from Tamara's school were milling about, laughing too loudly. My sister Tamara, who was 17 and perpetually the centre of attention, stood by the fireplace, twirling in a dress that shimmered like 1,000 shattered mirrors. It was clearly a prom dress, way too fancy for a casual party. She looked like she'd stepped off a magazine cover, all perfect hair and dazzling smile. My mother, Laurel, 46, was beside her, beaming, her arm around Tamara's waist. My father, Joseph, 48, was in the corner, trying to look busy, refilling a punch bowl. No one looked at me, not really. A quick, dismissive glance from my mum, then her eyes snapped back to Tamara. My dad just nodded vaguely, his gaze already drifting back to the punch. It was like I was a ghost, or maybe just part of the furniture. I tried to push past the knot forming in my chest, my room, my sanctuary. I just needed to collapse. I walked down the short hallway to my bedroom, the one I'd had since I was 6. The door was open, my breath hitched. It wasn't my room. The walls, which had been a faded blue, were now a vibrant, obnoxious pink. My old, sturdy dresser was gone, replaced by a white vanity with a huge circular mirror. My single bed, which I'd bought myself with my first paychecks, was nowhere to be seen. Instead, there was a plush, queen-sized bed with a ridiculous canopy and a mountain of throw pillows. My desk, where I'd spent countless hours studying for prerequisite courses, was replaced by a chaise lounge covered in faux fur. My clothes were in black trash bags piled neatly by the door, labelled Serenity Donation. I felt a cold, creeping dread. My car, I'd parked it right outside. I glanced out the window. The Civic was gone. I walked back into the living room, the music and laughter suddenly grating. My voice felt rusty, unused. "Mom, what is this?" Laurel finally turned, her smile fading slightly, but her eyes held no real concern. "Oh, Serenity, you're home. Tamara's prom after party is in full swing. Didn't you see the texts?" Texts. I hadn't checked my phone in hours. My phone was probably in one of those trash bags. "My room, Mom. My car." "What happened?" My voice was barely a whisper, but the raw edge in it cut through the noise. Laurel sighed, a put-upon sound. She stepped away from Tamara, who was now expertly ignoring me, chatting with a group of friends. "Look, honey, it's time you give back for once. Tamara needed a proper space for her new career, and the car... Well, she needed reliable transport for her auditions. You've never had Tamara's opportunities, and Tamara deserves this." My jaw dropped. Give back? I worked 2 jobs, paid my own way, saved every penny. I didn't ask for anything. Tamara got everything handed to her on a silver platter. "My college fund, Mom!" I choked out, a new, more terrifying thought seizing me. Did you touch my college fund?" Laurel's eyes flickered, a hint of something I couldn't quite decipher. Defensiveness, guilt. It vanished quickly. Don't be dramatic, Serenity. It's family money. It's for family. We'll talk later. She turned back to Tamara, her smile plastered on again. I didn't wait. My hands were shaking as I fumbled for my phone. It was in my back pocket, thankfully. I opened my banking app, my thumb feeling clumsy on the screen. The numbers loaded. My heart hammered against my ribs. I stared at the balance, willing it to be wrong, willing the numbers to change. Savings account, 0 zeros. My entire $27,000 college fund. Gone. My vision blurred, but the numbers on the screen were stark, undeniable. 0 euro, $27,000. Gone. The air left my lungs in a ragged gasp. It wasn't just money, it was 3 years of my life. Every night shift, every aching muscle, every skipped meal, every social event I'd missed. It was my nursing degree, my independence, my entire future. The celebratory noise of Tamara's party, the thumping music, the shrill laughter, it all crashed in on me, amplified and distorted. I looked up, saw Laurel still beaming at Tamara, saw Joseph still fiddling with the punch. They had done this, they had stolen my life, and they were celebrating. A cold, hard knot formed in my gut. I couldn't breathe the same air as them. I couldn't even look at them. My legs felt like lead, but I managed to turn, stumble out of the living room and out the front door. The cool morning air hit me, a shock after the suffocating heat of the house. I walked, not knowing where I was going, just putting distance between myself and that house of lies. My phone buzzed. A text from Kylie. Hey, you finished your shift. Want to grab coffee later? Kylie Horton, 23, was my former co-worker from the grocery store, now a close friend. She was the only person who actually saw me, not just the quiet, hard-working Serenity, but the real me. Her apartment was only a few blocks away. I didn't text back. I just started walking. She opened the door, still in her pajamas, hair a mess. Her eyes widened when she saw my face. Serenity! What happened? You look like you've seen a ghost. I just walked past her, straight to her couch, and collapsed. The words tumbled out, raw and broken. My room, my car, the party, Tamara, Laurel's cold justification. And then the $27,000. Kylie listened, her face growing grimmer with every word. When I finished, she just sat beside me, pulling me into a tight hug. Oh, Serenity. I'm so sorry. That's beyond messed up. We spent the next few hours in a haze. Kylie made me toast and coffee, even though my stomach churned. My mind raced, replaying Laurel's words. Tamara deserves this. Deserves what? To steal my future? Okay, Kylie said, her voice firm, pulling me back from the edge of despair. First things first, let's get your bank statements, online, now. My fingers trembled as I logged into my bank account on Kylie's laptop. I navigated to my transaction history. The $27,000 withdrawal wasn't a single transaction. It was a series of wire transfers over the past 2 months, all to the same recipient, Elite Talent Management, LLC. And the worst part? Each transfer was authorized with my signature, or rather, a very convincing forgery of it. The address listed for Elite Talent Management was in a city about 3 hours away, across the state line. Elite Talent Management, I muttered, the name tasting like ash. Tamara's new career? She's always talked about modelling. Then another horrifying discovery. I remembered Laurel saying, "Didn't you see the texts?" I hadn't received any school emails about my nursing program application either. I logged into my college portal. My application status was listed as withdrawn. There was an uploaded document, a letter, supposedly from me, stating I was withdrawing due to unforeseen family circumstances. My signature, again, perfectly forged. My breath hitched. They hadn't just stolen my money, they'd actively sabotaged my college application, cutting off my escape route. The betrayal was deeper, colder than I could have imagined. I felt a wave of nausea, followed by a surge of pure, unadulterated rage. It wasn't just hurt anymore. It was fury, a quiet, burning fury that settled deep in my bones. "Okay," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "Elite talent management. They wired my money to them. They have Tamara. And they think I dropped out of school." I looked at Kylie, my eyes narrowed. "I need to know everything about this agency, and about what Tamara is really doing." Kylie nodded, already pulling up a search engine. "What do you want to do?" "I want to call them," I said, a plan already forming. "I'll say I'm Tamara's manager, or, no, her agent, someone looking to collaborate. I need to know what they're up to." We found their number online. I took a deep breath, my heart pounding, but my resolve hardening with every beat. This wasn't about getting my money back anymore. This was about making them pay. The phone rang twice before a smooth, overly confident voice answered. "Elite Talent Management, Drake Nichols speaking. How can I help you achieve your dreams today?" "Yes, Mr. Nichols," I said, trying to sound professional, a little bored, like I had better things to do. "My name is Serenity Owens. I'm calling about one of your talents, Tamara Owens. I'm her new manager. We're looking to discuss her current projects, perhaps explore some new opportunities." There was a slight pause on the other end. "Tamara Owens, you say? Oh, wait. You mean Tiffany V, right? Our little star? Yeah, she's really coming along. Got some great shoots lined up for her next week. Some really exclusive work. We're very excited about Tiffany. She's got that certain spark, Tiffany V." My stomach clenched. "Exclusive work?" I pressed, my voice flat. "What kind of work exactly? And what kind of photo shoots are we talking about?" Drake Nichols chuckled, a low, oily sound. "Oh, you know, the kind that pays well, sweetheart. The kind that makes a girl a star. Let's just say Tiffany Fee is going to be very, very busy and very, very rich. The kind that pays well, sweetheart. The kind that makes a girl a star." Drake Nichols' words echoed in my ears long after I hung up. Tiffany V exclusive work. Rich. It all sounded so predatory. My stomach churned, a mix of disgust and a cold, hard determination. Kylie, who had been listening intently, looked at me, her face pale. "Serenity, that sounds really bad, like human trafficking bad. You can't just go there alone." "I have to," I said, my voice flat. "My money, my future." Tamara. I didn't care about Tamara in the way a loving sister would, not anymore. But she was still 17, still technically a minor, and my family had thrown her into this. I needed to know what exclusive work meant. I'm not going in blind. I'm going in as a recruiter, scouting talent. I'll record everything. The next morning, after a restless night on Kylie's couch, I borrowed some of Kylie's more professional-looking clothes, a blazer, a sensible blouse. I felt like I was putting on a costume. I took a bus. 3 hours later, I was standing outside a nondescript office building in a bustling part of the city. The sign on the door read, "Elite Talent Management." No glitter, no fanfare, just a cheap-looking logo. My heart hammered, but I pushed down the fear. This was for my future. And maybe, just maybe, for the naive girl my sister used to be. I walked in, my phone recording in my purse. The reception area was small, with a few generic headshots tacked to a bulletin board. A young woman, no older than me, sat at the desk, scrolling on her phone. "Can I help you?" she asked, barely looking up. Yes, I said, my voice steady, projecting confidence I didn't feel. Serenity Owens. I'm with Apex Talent Group. We're a new firm, expanding our roster, and I'm scouting for fresh faces. I heard good things about your agency's eye for unique talent. I even managed a small professional smile. The receptionist's eyes widened. Oh, Apex Talent. Yes, Mr. Nichols is in a meeting right now, but I can tell him you're here. A few minutes later, Drake Nichols emerged, looking exactly as slimy as he sounded on the phone. He was in his early 30s with slicked back hair and a too-tight suit. Ms. Owens, a pleasure. Apex Talent, you say? Always good to network. He ushered me into his office, a cramped space filled with framed photos of young women, some looking uncomfortable, some looking too eager. I kept my questions vague at first, talking about industry standards and market trends. Then I steered the conversation. We're particularly interested in models with a certain versatility, girls who aren't afraid to push boundaries, like your Tiffany V. She's quite striking. What kind of projects is she typically booked for? Drake leaned back, a smug look on his face. Tiffany? Oh, she's a natural. We've got her doing a lot of private portfolio work. High-end clients, you know. Discretion is key. Sometimes we even have to use creative solutions for age requirements. Some clients prefer a younger look, but we always make sure the paperwork is in order. He winked. Or, well, appears to be in order. My blood ran cold. Creative solutions for age requirements, I prompted, keeping my voice neutral. He chuckled. Yeah, we've got a system, fake IDs, parental consent forms that are less than legitimate. We've even got a few girls who use aliases like Tiffany V. Keeps things clean, you know. No messy paper trails back to their real lives, especially for the exclusive gigs. Those are the ones that really pay out. He gestured vaguely at the photos on his wall. Some of these girls are under 18, but their parents signed off. We handle all the legalities. He then launched into a spiel about their unique contracts that locked models into long-term exploitative agreements and how they took a massive cut of the earnings. He even showed me a few scripts for photo shoots that were clearly not for legitimate modelling. It was all there, on my phone, recording every damning word. Unlicensed activity, underage girls, forged documents, exploitative contracts. I left his office, my stomach churning, but a fierce resolve burning in my chest. I had what I needed. As soon as I was back on the bus, I texted Kylie, "Got it all. Need to talk to your uncle's friend." Kylie's uncle was a retired detective, and he'd mentioned a state fraud investigator named Melina Nelson, 33, who was sharp and didn't tolerate nonsense. Kylie had given me her number a few days ago, just in case. I called Melina explaining I had information about a potential fraud case involving a modelling agency. She agreed to meet me at a coffee shop near her office the next afternoon. While I was waiting for the bus to take me back to Kylie's, my phone rang. It was my father, Joseph. His voice was shaky, hesitant. "Serenity, are you okay? I haven't seen you." "Your mother said you were being dramatic." I felt a flicker of something, maybe pity, maybe just exhaustion. "I'm fine, Dad. Look, about Tamara," he continued, his voice dropping. "She mentioned some gig to me the other day, something about private shoots and aliases. It sounded shady, really shady. She said Laurel signed some papers. I don't know, is she really okay?" I said nothing, just listened to his nervous rambling. He was finally seeing it, or at least a sliver of it. But it was too late. I wasn't going to bail them out. "I've got to go, Dad," I said and hung up. The next day I met Melina Nelson. She was sharp, with intelligent eyes that missed nothing. I played the recordings from Drake Nichols' office, showed her the forged college withdrawal letter, and forwarded her the bank statements showing the wire transfers to elite talent management, all under my name. Melina listened, her expression unreadable. When the recordings finished, she looked at me, her gaze piercing. This is a lot, Serenity. A lot of serious allegations. Forgery, wire fraud, potential exploitation of minors, operating without a license. This isn't just a local issue. She took a sip of her coffee, then her phone buzzed. She glanced at it. This qualifies as federal fraud. You want me to talk, or do you? Her eyes met mine, a silent question. This qualifies as federal fraud. You want me to talk, or do you? Melina Nelson's question hung in the air between us. My mind raced. Talk to whom? The police? The FBI? The thought was daunting, but the alternative, letting them get away with it, was unthinkable. You talk, I said, my voice firm. Open the investigation. I'll cooperate fully. I want them to face consequences. My gaze was steady, meeting hers. There was no hesitation. This wasn't just about my money anymore. It was about every other girl Drake Nichols had exploited, every other family he'd ruined. Melina nodded, a slight, almost imperceptible shift in her expression. Understood. This will take time. Federal investigations are thorough. I understand, I replied. But I also need to protect myself. My name is on those forged documents. My college application was sabotaged. I need a lawyer. She gave me a small, approving nod. Smart. I can recommend a few, but you'll want someone who specializes in fraud and civil litigation. Someone aggressive. I thanked her, and we exchanged contact information. As I left the coffee shop, a sense of grim satisfaction settled over me. The wheels were in motion. The next few days were a blur of research. I used Kylie's laptop, searching for lawyers who fit Melina's description. I had a small emergency fund, maybe a few $100s, from odd jobs and selling some old textbooks. Not much, but enough for an initial consultation. I found Jermaine Whitney, a 30-year-old lawyer whose online reviews described him as sharp, uncompromising, and a bulldog in court. His firm was small, but his reputation was not. He seemed like exactly what I needed. I called his office and managed to secure a consultation for the following week. During the meeting, I laid out everything. The stolen savings, the forged college letter, the recordings of Drake Nichols, the details of Tamara's modelling alias, and Melina Nelson's involvement. Jermaine listened, his expression unreadable, occasionally scribbling notes. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful look on his face. "This is complex, Serenity," he said, his voice calm but authoritative. "Criminal fraud, civil damages, potential child exploitation. It's a strong case, but it will be a fight, especially if your own family is implicated." "They are," I stated, my voice devoid of emotion. "My mother forged the documents. My sister is involved with the agency." He studied me for a moment, as if trying to gauge my resolve. "You understand what this means. Your family will be facing serious charges. Your mother could go to prison. Your sister's life will be irrevocably altered." "I understand," I repeated, my voice steady. "They made their choices. I'm making mine," Jermaine nodded slowly. "All right, I'll take the case. We'll start by filing a civil suit against Elite Talent Management and pursuing criminal charges against those involved, including your mother, for the forgery and facilitation." The next few weeks were a tense waiting game. Melina kept me updated, but vaguely. "Things are moving," she'd text, "building the case." Jermaine was busy with filings and subpoenas. I continued to stay at Kylie's, working my night shifts, saving every penny. My old life felt like a distant dream. My family didn't call. I didn't call them. Then one Tuesday morning, Kylie burst into the living room, her phone in hand. "Serenity, you need to see this." She held up her phone. The local news channel was running a breaking story. Breaking news. State and federal authorities raid Elite Talent Management Agency. The screen showed flashing lights, police cars, and agents swarming the office building I had visited. My heart leapt into my throat. The reporter's voice was grim. Sources confirm multiple arrests have been made in connection with an alleged fraudulent modelling agency operating out of this location. Among those detained is Drake Nichols, the agency's CEO. Reports indicated the agency was involved in wire fraud, forgery, and potentially the exploitation of minors. My breath hitched. Then the camera panned. And there she was, Tamara. She was being led out of the building in handcuffs, her face streaked with tears, her glamorous facade completely shattered. She was wearing a ridiculous, skimpy outfit, clearly part of a photo shoot. She looked terrified, bewildered. Suddenly, a woman I recognized as one of the other models from Drake's office was also being led out, screaming. The reporter continued. Among the shocking developments, sources indicate that parents may have been complicit in the alleged exploitation. We have just received confirmation that Laurel Owens, mother of one of the models, has been arrested for knowingly facilitating underage impersonation by forging permission slips and other documents. My mother. Arrested. Forged permission slips. The pieces clicked into place. The college withdrawal letter, the bank transfers, all of it. The camera zoomed in on Tamara, who was now screaming, thrashing against the officers. "This isn't fair. I didn't do anything. Serenity, Mom, help me. My name." She screamed my name. An officer tried to calm her, but she just kept wailing. As they pushed her towards a waiting police car, she stumbled, and for a split second her eyes locked with mine through the TV screen. I was standing in Kylie's living room, but in that moment it felt like I was right there, in front of her. A cold, almost alien calm settled over me. I walked towards the screen, my reflection superimposed over the chaos. "Never treat a girl like she's forgettable," I whispered, my voice barely audible, even to myself. It was the first time I had felt truly powerful, and it was terrifying. Never treat a girl like she's forgettable. The words had slipped out. A quiet, cold promise to myself. Watching Tamara's breakdown on the news, seeing Laurel's mugshot flash across the screen, it wasn't satisfying in the way I'd imagined. It was just cold, a sense of inevitability. The raid on elite talent management was everywhere. Local news, then national tabloids, all picking up the story of the glamorous young models and the shady agency. Tamara was released on bail a few days later, her face gaunt, her usual sparkle completely gone. Laurel, on the other hand, faced more serious charges. The forgery of my college withdrawal letter, the forged permission slips for Tamara and other minors. That was federal territory. She wasn't formally indicted yet, but the investigation was ongoing. Meanwhile, the house, our house, it had been technically frozen as an asset connected to the fraud investigation. Laurel had been using my stolen money to pay the mortgage, among other things. With my funds gone and her now arrested, the payments had stopped. I had been sending money home every month from my CNA wages to help with bills, a silent contribution that had gone unacknowledged for years. That had stopped the day I found my room emptied. A few weeks later, the bank moved in. A foreclosure notice was taped to the front door. The house, the symbol of their perfect, curated life, was gone. I was at work, pushing a medication cart down a quiet hallway when my phone buzzed. It was Laurel. I almost didn't answer. But a strange curiosity, a desire to hear what she would say, made me pick up. "Serenity?" Her voice was thin, reedy, completely unlike the imperious tone I was used to. "Serenity, please, you have to help us. This is a nightmare." I kept walking, my expression blank. "Help you with what, Mom?" The house. They're taking the house. And Tamara, she's a mess. She won't eat. She just cries. This is all a misunderstanding. You know it is. You just need to tell them. Tell them it was all a mistake. That you gave us the money, that you signed those papers. You can fix this, Serenity. You always could. You just need to give back for once. The words hit me, a sickening echo of that morning in the living room. Give back for once. My jaw tightened. Give back what, Mum? My life, my future. You already took that. Don't be dramatic, she snapped, a flash of her old self, before her voice dissolved into sobs. Please, Serenity, just fix it. You're so smart. You always were. You can make them understand. I stopped at a patient's door, my hand on the knob. There's nothing to fix, Mom. The truth is out. You made your choices, Tamara made hers, and I made mine. I hung up. My hand didn't even tremble. An hour later, my phone rang again. It was Joseph, my father. His voice was trembling, a complete contrast to Laurel's desperate pleas. Serenity? Is that you? Your mother? She's not well. And the house. I don't know what to do. I never wanted this for you. I should have stopped her. His words were laced with regret, a raw, uncharacteristic vulnerability. It was the first time I'd ever heard him truly acknowledge their failure, their betrayal. For a split second, a pang of something akin to sadness, or maybe just exhaustion, went through me, but it was quickly replaced by the cold, hard reality. Where had he been for the past 19 years? Where was his concern when I was working those double shifts, when my room was being emptied, when my future was being stolen? It's too late, Dad, I said, my voice flat. It's been too late for a long time. He stammered, tried to say something else, but I ended the call. The silence afterward was profound. I felt nothing but a quiet emptiness. A few days later, I was checking my mail at Kylie's apartment. Amidst junk mail and bills, there it was. A thick envelope with the familiar emblem of the nursing school I'd applied to. My heart gave a strange lurch. I opened it, my fingers almost tearing the paper. Dear Serenity Owens, we are delighted to inform you of your acceptance into the Bachelor of Science in Nursing program for the upcoming fall semester. I skimmed further down, my eyes widening. Furthermore, based on your exceptional academic record and demonstrated financial need, we are pleased to offer you the Serenity Scholarship, a full tuition scholarship for the duration of your program. My breath hitched. A full tuition scholarship. It was real. It was happening. My escape. My future. It was finally truly mine. The last piece of the puzzle. I was free. The acceptance letter, the scholarship. It felt like a physical weight lifting from my shoulders. A full tuition scholarship. The universe, or perhaps just my own relentless hard work, had given me a second chance, a way out of the mess my family had created. It was late summer now, just a few weeks before the fall semester was set to begin. I was officially 19 years old, and finally my life was my own. I spent the next few days packing the few belongings I had left. Kylie helped me, her presence a steady anchor in the swirling aftermath. My clothes from the trash bags, some books, a few sentimental items I'd managed to retrieve from my old room before the house was fully vacated. My dorm room was small, a single minimalist space with a twin bed, a desk, and a small closet. It was almost empty, but it was mine. No one could take it from me. No one could redecorate it or claim it for someone else. It was peaceful. For the first time in a long time, I felt a deep sense of quiet peace. The first few days on campus were a blur of orientation, new faces, and the overwhelming feeling of starting over. I kept my head down, focused on my classes, on building this new life. I didn't reach out to my family. I didn't want to. But they reached out to me. My phone started buzzing with calls from unknown numbers. Messages piled up in my inbox, then on social media. It was Tamara. Her texts were erratic, a mix of anger and desperation. "How could you do this to Mom?" Followed by, "Please, Serenity, I don't know what to do. I have nowhere to go." Then, "Why won't you answer me?" I blocked her number, then her emails, then her social media accounts. Every attempt she made to contact me was met with a wall of silence. I had nothing left to say to her or to Laurel. The well of my empathy had run dry years ago, slowly drained by their constant demands and casual cruelty. Through a mutual friend from high school, someone who hadn't been part of Tamara's inner circle, I heard snippets of what was happening. Tamara had dropped out of her senior year of high school, the modelling scam, the arrests, the foreclosure. It was all over the local news, and her name, her real name, was tied to it. The friend said Tamara was couch surfing, bouncing between different acquaintances, posting endless self-pitying rants online about how her life had been ruined by jealous people. She was still the victim, even now. Laurel's situation was worse. Her mugshots were widely circulated online, a stark contrast to the carefully curated image she'd always presented. The charges against her were serious, and Jermaine had told me the prosecution was building a strong case. Joseph, my father, had finally, irrevocably separated from her. He'd moved in with his brother in another town, apparently unable to cope with the fallout. He hadn't tried to contact me again after that one phone call. I didn't know if he was ashamed or just relieved to be out of Laurel's orbit. Either way, I felt nothing. One crisp autumn afternoon, as I was walking back from class, I saw a familiar envelope in my campus mailbox. It was a plain white envelope, no return address, but the handwriting, it was messy, almost childlike, yet undeniably familiar. My heart gave a strange cold thump. It was from Tamara. I took it back to my dorm room, my hands steady. I sat on my bed, the envelope resting in my palm. For a moment, I just stared at it. All the anger, the hurt, the years of feeling invisible, it all coalesced into a dull ache. She wanted something. She always wanted something. I tore open the flap. Inside, folded neatly, was a crisp $100 bill, and underneath it a small, sloppily scrawled note. "I'm sorry, I need help, please." Ting. My gaze lingered on the "I'm sorry." It felt hollow, too little, too late. The $100 bill was probably all she had left, a desperate plea from a girl who had never learned to stand on her own 2 feet. I looked at the note, then at the $100 bill. The money I had worked so hard for, the money they had stolen, was now gone. This paltry sum, offered as a token of apology, felt like an insult. My future was secured by my own efforts, by my own scholarship. I didn't need her pity or her belated, self-serving apology. I crumpled the note and the bill in my hand. My eyes drifted to the small metal wastebasket beside my desk. I looked at the crumpled note and the $100 bill in my hand. "I'm sorry, I need help, please." T. The words were a ghost of the past, a desperate plea from a sister who had never once considered my needs. The money felt like a bribe, a pathetic attempt to buy back a relationship she had shattered. I didn't need it. I didn't want it. Without a second thought, I walked to the small wastebasket beside my desk and dropped the crumpled paper and the bill inside. It landed with a soft, insignificant thud. No drama, no lingering regret. Just a quiet, definitive end. The next few months passed in a steady rhythm of classes, studying, and my part-time job at the campus library. I was thriving. The scholarship meant I could focus entirely on my studies, something I'd only dreamed of. I was making friends slowly, cautiously. My life was moving forward, away from the wreckage of my past. Then came the email from Jermaine Whitney. The trial for Drake Nichols and the other key players in elite talent management was set. My victim impact statement was scheduled for the following Tuesday. The day arrived crisp and clear, a bright autumn sun shining down on the city courthouse. I took the bus, just like I had when I went to confront Drake Nichols. This time there was no fear, only a quiet resolve. Kylie had offered to come, but I told her I needed to do this alone. This was my final step, my ultimate severance. The courtroom was surprisingly full. Reporters, a few curious onlookers, and the families of other girls who had been exploited by the agency. Drake Nichols sat at the defense table looking much smaller, much less confident than he had in his office. Tamara wasn't there. Laurel wasn't there. They were dealing with their own legal battles, their own consequences. When my name was called, I walked to the stand, my spine straight. I took the oath, my voice clear. The prosecutor asked me a few questions, leading me through the facts. The stolen money, the forged documents, the sabotaged college application. I answered calmly, factually, devoid of emotion. Then it was time for my victim impact statement. I looked at the judge, then briefly at Drake Nichols. His eyes darted away. "Your Honour," I began, my voice steady, carrying through the quiet courtroom. "For years, I worked 2 jobs, sometimes double shifts, to save for nursing school. Every penny was for my future, for my independence. When I discovered my entire savings, $27,000, had been stolen and wired to elite talent management, it wasn't just a financial loss." I paused, letting the words hang in the air. It was the betrayal of my family. It was the realization that the people who were supposed to protect me, who were supposed to support me, had actively conspired to steal my future, to keep me small, to make me give back for opportunities they believed my sister deserved more. My gaze hardened. They didn't just steal my savings. They stole the version of me that trusted my family. They stole my sense of security, my belief that hard work would pay off, that I had a safe place to return to. They tried to erase my future, to force me into a life I didn't want, all to prop up a lie. I looked directly at Drake Nichols. "And you, Mr. Nichols, you preyed on that lie. You took advantage of a desperate family, and you exploited vulnerable girls, including my sister, under the guise of talent management. You built your empire on lies and forged documents, just like my mother built her perfect life on my stolen future. But you failed," I continued, my voice gaining a quiet power. "You didn't erase my future. You didn't break me. You only showed me what I was truly capable of. You showed me that I could stand on my own, that I could fight for myself, and that I didn't need anyone's permission or approval to build the life I wanted. I am now a nursing student on a full scholarship," I stated, a quiet triumph in my voice. "My future is mine, and it is built on my own hard work, not on stolen money or forged documents. The consequences of your actions, and the actions of those who enabled you, are now your burden to bear, not mine," I finished, and a profound silence filled the courtroom. I stepped down from the stand, my legs strong beneath me. I didn't look back. I walked out of the courtroom, past the hushed reporters, past the grim-faced lawyers, and into the sunlight. The air was crisp, the sky a brilliant blue. I felt free, lighter than I had in years. As I walked away, I heard the sudden clamour behind me. The press, held back during my statement, now swarmed. I heard flashes, shouts of questions, the frantic voices of reporters. "Mr. Nichols, any comment on the victim's statement? Tamara Owens, what's next for you?" I didn't turn around. I kept walking, away from the chaos, away from the past. I caught a glimpse of my reflection in a glass door as I passed. My face was calm, resolute. And then, as I walked on, my reflection faded from the mirror behind me, leaving only the swirling press, the flashing cameras, and the crumbling house of cards. My dorm room was quiet, the only sound the soft scratch of my pen against the paper of my journal. It wasn't a fancy journal, just a simple spiral-bound notebook, but it had become a place for me to sort through the chaos that had been my life. October 26th. I wrote the date, then paused. It had been a few weeks since the trial, since I'd walked out of that courthouse into the blinding sunlight. Drake Nichols had been convicted on multiple counts of fraud and exploitation. The others, involved with elite talent management, were facing their own sentences. Justice, in a cold, procedural way, had been served. I didn't win back my family, I wrote, the words flowing easily. I didn't want to. The truth of that statement settled deep in my chest. There was no grand reunion, no tearful apologies, no sudden realization from Laurel or Tamara that they had been wrong. There was just silence, and that was exactly what I wanted. Laurel's trial was still pending, but Jermaine had told me the evidence against her was overwhelming. The forged documents, the bank records, my testimony, and the testimony of other families whose children had been exploited. Her life, once so meticulously curated, was now a public spectacle of legal battles and social ruin. Joseph was living with his brother, a quiet, broken man finally free from Laurel's suffocating influence, but also stripped of the family he'd once passively enabled. I hadn't heard from him since that one desperate call. I didn't expect to. Tamara, my little sister. The one who had always been the centre of attention, the one who deserved this. She was still blocking me from her online pity parties, but the news of her drifting, her inability to hold down a job, her constant complaints about being a victim, reached me through the campus grapevine. She was learning the hard way that charisma and beauty weren't enough when the foundation was built on lies. The house, our house, had been repossessed by the bank, sold at auction. The physical manifestation of their carefully constructed facade was gone. The cost of my vengeance. It wasn't a sudden, overwhelming guilt. It was a quiet severing. The loneliness was real sometimes, the knowledge that I was truly, utterly alone in the world, with no safety net of family. But that loneliness was also freedom. It was the space to build something entirely new, something entirely mine. My thoughts were interrupted by a knock on my dorm room door. Serenity? You in there? It was Marley White, a quirky med student from down the hall. We'd bonded over late-night study sessions and a shared love for terrible sci-fi movies. She was 20, a year older than me, with bright, curious eyes and a habit of saying exactly what was on her mind. Come in, I called out, closing my journal. Marley poked her head in, a wide grin on her face. Hey, just wanted to drop this off. Saw it at a little shop downtown and thought of you. She held out a ceramic mug. It was a deep, calming blue, and emblazoned on the side in bold, white letters were the words, "Vengeance doesn't make you bitter. Lying to yourself does." I took the mug, turning it over in my hands. A small, genuine smile touched my lips. Wow, that's perfect, actually. Marley shrugged, her eyes twinkling. Figured. You've got that quiet intensity, you know, like you've seen some stuff, but you're not letting it define you. Anyway, gotta run. Anatomy lab calls. She waved and disappeared down the hall. I looked at the mug again. Vengeance doesn't make you bitter. Lying to yourself does. It resonated deeply. For years I had lied to myself, pretended that their neglect didn't sting, that their favoritism didn't wound, that their betrayal wasn't happening. I had tried to be the good daughter, the quiet sister, the one who gave back. But that was the real bitterness, the quiet rage of being invisible. Karma had levelled the house of lies my family built, and in its place I was building my own. I was no longer a background player in someone else's story. I was the protagonist of my own. I had a scholarship, a future, and a quiet, unshakable sense of self. I picked up my pen again, adding a final thought to my journal. No matter where she is now, my little sister is still blocked, and I'm still free.
The Columbia Law acceptance letter felt heavier than it looked, sitting in my hands. I was 22, and for years, this piece of paper had been the impossible dream. Every late-night shift at the diner, every weekend tutoring gig, every skipped social event, it had all been for this. I'd worked my ass off, not just for the grades, but for the money. My parents had set up a college fund for me when I was little, and while I knew it wouldn't cover everything, it was supposed to be the foundation. The big chunk. Before continuing, please share your location in the comments below. I rushed over to my dad's office, the acceptance letter clutched tight. Bowen Sullivan, my father was 52, a businessman who always talked about family loyalty, especially when it benefited him. He was on the phone, leaning back in his leather chair, looking important. I waited, buzzing with excitement. "Dad, look!" I practically shoved the letter at him the second he hung up. He took it, his eyes scanning the bold Columbia Law letterhead. A slow smile spread across his face. "Well, Sloan, that's fantastic. I knew you had it in you." He clapped me on the shoulder. "My smart girl." "I know, right?" I grinned, the relief and joy washing over me. "So I just need to get the financial aid stuff sorted, and then the college fund. I mean, it should cover a good chunk of the first year, right? I can figure out the rest with loans and scholarships." His smile faltered. He cleared his throat, pushing his glasses up his nose. "Ah, the fund, yes. About that, kiddo." He gestured for me to sit. My stomach tightened. This wasn't the proud dad moment I'd envisioned. There's been a temporary reallocation. "Relocation?" I repeated, my voice flat. He leaned forward, trying to sound reasonable. "Look, Sloan, it's not gone. It's just on loan to Haley." My cousin, Haley Sullivan. She was 23, a year older than me, and the self-proclaimed star of the family. From the moment she could hold a phone, she'd been convinced she was destined for fame. Every family gathering, every holiday, it was always about Haley and her latest project. When I was 10, she got a brand new camera for her YouTube channel, while I got a used bike. When I was 16, struggling with calculus, she was getting praise for her visionary Instagram filters. It was always Haley. "Haley?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "My college fund?" "Why?" "Her podcast, Haley Unfiltered." "It was struggling, Sloan," he said, as if this was a perfectly normal, logical explanation. "She needed a significant investment to really get it off the ground, to buy new equipment, pay for marketing, get some big-name guests. Your Aunt Poppy and I agreed it was a smart move. She's a star in the making, Sloan. She just needed a little push." "A little push?" I felt a cold dread spread through me. "How much?" He picked up a pen, twirling it. "Well, it was a substantial amount. We needed to act fast. It was a time-sensitive opportunity." He paused, then finally looked me in the eye. "There's $17.32 left. $17.32. My entire future, reduced to pocket change. The number hit me like a physical blow. All those years, all that sacrifice, all that trust, gone for Haley's podcast. My mind reeled. It wasn't just the money. It was the blatant favoritism, the casual disregard for my dreams. I remembered being 12, winning a regional science fair, and my dad barely looking up from his phone while he was on a call with Poppy, gushing about Haley's latest dance recital. Or when I got into the advanced placement classes in high school, and the family group chat was still buzzing about Haley's viral TikTok dance that got 500 views. I was the responsible one, the smart one, the one who worked hard. Haley was the one who got everything handed to her, the one who was constantly propped up no matter how flimsy her ambitions. Aunt Poppy, 47, Haley's mother and my dad's sister, walked in then, her face alight. "Bowen, darling, have you told Sloan the good news about Haley's podcast? It's really taking off." She beamed at me, completely oblivious, or perhaps willfully ignorant, of the devastation she was witnessing. "Haley's going to be huge, Sloan. Just huge. And it's all thanks to your father's foresight." "Foresight?" I finally found my voice, sharp and thin. "You emptied my college fund for a podcast? Do you even know how much law school costs?" Bowen sighed, running a hand over his bald spot. "Sloan, don't be dramatic. It's an investment in family. Haley will pay it back. When she's famous, she'll make millions. It's a loan, not a gift." A loan I didn't agree to, from money that was mine. I shot back, my voice rising. "And what if she doesn't? What if her podcast flops like everything else she's ever tried?" "Sloan," Poppy gasped, clutching her chest, "how can you say such a thing about your cousin? She's working so hard." Just then, Haley herself breezed in, phone in hand, already talking into it. "Oh my God, I just got off the phone with this brand and they're totally interested in a collab. This is it, guys, I can feel it." She was 23, dressed in designer athleisure, looking perfectly put together, oblivious to the storm she'd caused. She finally noticed my furious face. "Oh, hey, Sloan, what's up?" "My college fund, Haley. That's what's up," I snapped. Her eyes widened, a flicker of something that might have been guilt, quickly replaced by practiced remorse. "Oh, right. Yeah, about that. Look, I'm so sorry, Sloan. I really am. But it was, a now or never thing. And Dad and Aunt Poppy said it was fine, it's just a loan. I'll totally pay you back. As soon as I blow up, you'll be the first person I buy a private jet for. Or, a really nice car. You're smart, Sloan. You'll figure something out." Her words, dripping with fake sincerity and delusional promises, were the final insult. My rage, which had been simmering, suddenly solidified into something cold and hard. Figure something out? Oh, I would. I would figure out something they'd never see coming. The sting of Haley's final dismissive words echoed in my ears long after I'd stormed out of my dad's office. "You're smart, Sloan. You'll figure something out." Yeah, I would, but it wouldn't be for my benefit, not in the way they expected. The first few days were a blur of raw anger and cold, hard reality. My lease on the apartment near campus was up in a month, and with no college fund, staying there was impossible. I packed up my meager belongings and moved back into the cramped one-bedroom apartment I'd shared with a roommate for the last 2 years, now entirely on my own. It was a shoebox, but it was mine, and it was cheaper. Columbia law felt like a cruel joke. I spent hours online, hunched over my laptop, applying for every emergency scholarship, every grant, every obscure loan program I could find. Most required essays about hardship, which, for once, I had in spades. But the deadlines were tight and the competition fierce. It felt like shouting into the void. To make ends meet, I doubled down on work. My diner shifts went from 4 to 6 a week, and I picked up more hours tutoring high schoolers in math and science. My days started before dawn and ended long after midnight, fueled by lukewarm coffee and a simmering resentment that kept me going. I was 22, exhausted and bitter. My dream was slipping away, replaced by the mundane grind of survival. One night, after a particularly grueling shift, I found myself scrolling through social media, a habit I usually avoided. And then, like a moth to a flame, I found myself on Haley's dormant Instagram page. Her last post was from 3 months ago, a heavily filtered selfie with a caption about taking a much-needed creative break. The comments were a mix of sycophantic praise, pity, and a few outright questions about why her podcast, Haley Unfiltered, had just stopped. I clicked through to her podcast official page. It was a graveyard. The last episode had been posted 6 months ago. I remembered my dad and Poppy gushing about how it was about to blow up right around the time they loaned Haley my money. Clearly it hadn't. I started digging. I found old articles, press releases, sponsor announcements. I listened to a few of her episodes, cringing at the vapid content, the endless self-promotion, the thinly veiled attempts at drama that always fell flat. She talked about toxic friendships without naming names, hinted at industry betrayals, and rambled on about her journey to authenticity while clearly faking every emotion. It was all facade, no substance. I tracked down her old sponsors, a few small beauty brands, a subscription box service, a dubious-looking wellness tea. Most of them had pulled out before the podcast went dark. I found forums, Reddit threads, and TikTok comments where people speculated about her sudden disappearance. Some fans were genuinely concerned. Others were just curious. There was a small, loyal core, mostly young girls, who still believed in the Haley Sullivan brand. They posted miss you comments and comeback emojis. That's when the idea sparked. What if I could make Haley famous? Not for her vapid content, but for something else entirely. Something that would expose the rot beneath the surface. My dad and Poppy wanted her to be a star. Fine. She'd be a star. A supernova, burning bright before collapsing into a black hole. It was risky. Probably illegal. Definitely morally gray. But the thought of it, the sheer poetic justice, sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. I didn't want my money back anymore. I wanted to watch them all squirm. I knew just the person to help me. Flynn McGregor. He was 25, an old friend from high school, a quiet kid who'd always been obsessed with computers. He was a freelance coder now, specializing in SEO and digital marketing, but I knew he dabbled in less conventional tech solutions. He was discreet, brilliant, and owed me a favor from that time I helped him pass senior year English. I sent him a cryptic text, "Need your tech wizardry. Big project, confidential." He replied almost immediately, "Intriguing." Coffee? We met at a quiet cafe near my apartment a few days later. I laid it all out for him. The stolen college fund, Haley's failed podcast, my family's sickening favoritism. I watched his expression shift from polite interest to genuine shock, then to a flicker of understanding. "So, you want to revive her podcast?" he asked, stirring his coffee. "Not exactly revive it," I said, leaning forward. "I want to take it over. Ghost her digital presence. Get admin access to her accounts, her old podcast hosting, her social media. I want to make it look like she's back, but it won't be her. It'll be me." He raised an eyebrow, a slow smile playing on his lips. "That's ambitious and potentially very messy. You're talking about identity manipulation, digital impersonation. Why?" "Because they think I'm just going to roll over," I said, my voice low and steady. "They think I'll figure something out while they celebrate Haley's success. I want to give them success, a very specific kind of success, the kind that comes crashing down. Flynn took a long sip of his coffee, his eyes thoughtful. Okay, I get the motivation. But this isn't just about getting access. This is about maintaining a persona, creating content, managing a public narrative, all without her knowing. I know, I said. I've been studying her. Her voice, her mannerisms, her stupid catchphrases. I can do it. I just need the keys to the kingdom. He leaned back, considering. It's a lot of work, a lot of risk. How far do you want this to go? My gaze met his, cold and unwavering, until she wishes I'd just let her sink. Flynn was good, better than good. Within a week of our coffee meeting, he'd managed to gain administrative access to Haley's old podcast hosting platform, her dormant Instagram, and even her long-forgotten TikTok account. He used some clever social engineering and a few old publicly available data breaches to guess her ridiculously simple passwords. Apparently, Haley Fangirl23 was still her go-to for everything. Classic Haley. All right, you're in, Flynn said, leaning back from his multiple monitors in his cluttered home office. But remember, any content you put out, any interaction, it has to be her. The voice, the tone, the visuals. One slip up, and this whole thing collapses. I nodded, already ahead of him. For the past 2 weeks, I'd been living and breathing Haley. I'd rewatched every single one of her old YouTube vlogs, listened to her podcast episodes on repeat, and scrolled through hundreds of her Instagram stories. I studied her vocal inflections, her slightly nasal laugh, the way she'd trail off sentences, her overuse of like and literally. I practiced her gestures in front of my bathroom mirror, the hair flip, the wide-eyed innocent look, the pout. It was nauseating, but I was determined. I was 22, and this was my new full-time job, layered on top of my actual full-time jobs. My apartment, usually a quiet sanctuary, became my studio. I bought a cheap ring light and a decent microphone, the kind Haley would have scoffed at, but that would pass for authentic to her audience. I experimented with filters, mimicking the soft, slightly oversaturated look she favored. The plan was simple. Feed the beast. Haley's fans were hungry for content, and her family was desperate for her to be famous. I would give them what they wanted, but with a twist. I wouldn't just revive her old content. I'd twist it, infuse it with just enough truth to make it believable, and enough manufactured drama to make it go viral. I started with the podcast. Flynn helped me set up a voice modulator, a subtle one that would just slightly alter my pitch and add a hint of Haley's breathy quality, making it harder to distinguish from her actual voice, especially with background music and sound effects. I recorded a short, cryptic audio message and posted it to her dormant podcast feed, titled, "A Message from Haley, I'm Back and I'm Unfiltered." It was just 30 seconds of me, as Haley saying, "Hey guys, it's me. I know it's been a minute. A lot has happened, more than you know. I'm ready to talk, really talk. Are you?" The response was immediate. Within hours, the comment section on her old Instagram post exploded. "OMG, she's back. Haley, we missed you. What happened?" Then came the first full episode. I chose a bait title, "Why I Lied About the Trolls." In it, I, as Haley, tearfully confessed to exaggerating online harassment for sympathy, hinting at a dark period and a toxic inner circle that encouraged her to fabricate drama. It was a half-truth, based on my observations of her past behavior, but spun into a narrative of vulnerability and redemption. The internet ate it up. TikTok and Reddit threads exploded. "Haley Sullivan is back and she's spilling tea. Is this for real or just another influencer stunt? Who are the toxic friends? People speculated wildly, dissecting every word, every carefully placed pause. The engagement metrics Flynn was tracking were through the roof. I followed up with the truth behind the sponsorship scandal, where Haley confessed to taking money from a dubious wellness brand without fully vetting their product, again blaming bad advice and naivety. This one was pure fabrication, designed to make her seem relatable and a victim of the cutthroat influencer world. It worked. Brands started reaching out to Flynn, who was managing the Haley email account, expressing concern and interest in future collaborations. I kept feeding the fire. I posted carefully curated, candid photos on Instagram, showing Haley looking thoughtful, a little sad, but resilient. I wrote long, rambling captions about personal growth and finding my true voice. I even hinted at fake relationships and toxic friendships, weaving in details from Haley's actual life, but twisting them to fit my narrative. For instance, Haley had a fleeting crush on a minor reality TV star once. I turned it into a deeply manipulative relationship that almost broke her. It was all designed to generate buzz, to make her seem like a phoenix rising from the ashes, but with a trail of manufactured drama in her wake. My father, Bowen, and Aunt Poppy, 47, started noticing. I saw their comments on Haley's posts, gushing about her bravery and authenticity. They had no idea it was me, Sloane, the one they dismissed, pulling the strings. It was sickening and exhilarating. Then came the big one. An email landed in the Haley inbox forwarded by Flynn. It was from a talent management agency, a fairly reputable one, expressing interest in signing Haley, given her incredible comeback and renewed public interest. They wanted to schedule a meeting, and then, a few days later, another email. A past sponsor, a major beauty brand that had pulled out of Haley's original podcast, offered a huge deal for a brand relaunch. They wanted Haley Unfiltered to be the face of their new campaign. I stared at the screen, a cold smile spreading across my face. This was it. The hook was set. The emails from the talent agency and the beauty brand were a game changer. This wasn't just about getting a few clicks anymore. This was real money, real contracts, and that meant it was time for the next phase of the plan. I called Flynn immediately. "We need to talk about the money," I told him. All of it. He came over to my apartment, looking a little more tired than usual. He was 25, and I knew he was juggling his own clients, but he hadn't complained once about the extra work. "Okay, so the talent agency wants a 15% cut. The beauty brand is offering a 6-figure deal for a year-long campaign, plus royalties on product sales. This is big, Sloane." "Exactly," I said, pacing my tiny living room. "Too big to just let it sit in an account that Haley or my dad could get their hands on. We need to make it untouchable and public." Flynn's eyes lit up. A nonprofit? Something in her name, but legally structured so she can't touch the principal? "Bingo," I confirmed. "Something that sounds good. Something that aligns with her new, authentic brand. Something about supporting creators, mental health, whatever buzzwords she'd use." Over the next few days, Flynn worked his magic. He found a pro bono legal service that helps set up nonprofit organizations for emerging artists, and we used a burner email to contact them, posing as Haley Sullivan's legal team. We drafted a mission statement, registered the name Voices Unfiltered, and set up the legal framework. The stated purpose was to empower emerging digital creators with mental health resources and ethical guidance. It was perfect. It sounded exactly like something the new Haley would champion. The crucial part was the legal structure. All incoming revenue from the podcast, sponsorships, and future brand deals would be legally bound to flow directly into the Voices Unfiltered Trust. Haley, would be the public face, the founder, but she would have no direct access to the funds. The trust would be managed by an independent board, which, for now, was just Flynn and a shell company he set up, and the money could only be dispersed for the stated charitable purposes, not for personal gain. It was all above board, legally sound, and completely out of Haley's reach. "It's done," Flynn announced a week later, sending me the official registration documents. "Every cent that comes in from now on goes straight into the trust." She's effectively working for free, building a charitable empire she can't control. A slow, satisfied smile spread across my face. This was better than just taking her money. This was making her a figurehead for her own downfall. Meanwhile, the family group chat was a flurry of activity. Bowen, 52, and Poppy, 47, were practically bursting with pride. Bowen, so proud of Haley. Her podcast comeback is incredible. Just spoke to a contact at the talent agency. They're really impressed. Poppy, my little star. I always knew she'd make it. All that hard work is finally paying off. Bowen, it just goes to show, Sloan, sometimes you have to take risks for family. This investment is really paying off. That last message was directed at me, a subtle jab, a reminder of what they'd done. They thought they were being vindicated. They thought their investment was flourishing. The validation I'd craved my whole life, the recognition for my intelligence and tenacity, was finally coming from my father, but he was directing it at my cousin's fabricated success. It was a bitter pill, but also a potent motivator. I responded to Bowen's message with the simple, "That's great, Dad." My fingers itched to type more, to scream, but I held back. Not yet. The next step was to really stir the pot. The Haley persona needed to become even more sympathetic, more vulnerable. I decided to make her a victim, not just of toxic friends, but of her own family. I drafted a fake email, carefully worded to sound like Haley, and sent it to a major gossip blog known for breaking influencer news. The subject line was "Exclusive, Influencer Haley Sullivan's Secret Battle, Exploited by Family for Fame." The email, supposedly from Haley, hinted at the immense pressure she was under, the unrealistic expectations from her family, and how she felt used and manipulated to maintain a certain image. It was vague enough to be plausible, but pointed enough to raise eyebrows. I included a fabricated anecdote about a family member pushing her to take a sponsorship she didn't want, and another about being forced to maintain a public facade of happiness when she was secretly struggling. The blog picked it up within hours. The story blew up. Haley Sullivan's shocking confession, family exploitation? The comments were a mix of outrage and sympathy. Her fan base rallied around her, condemning the unnamed family members. Other influencers chimed in, sharing their own struggles with family pressure. Sponsors went nuts. They loved the drama, the vulnerability, the authenticity. The beauty brand that had offered the big deal contacted Flynn, saying they wanted to capitalize on the buzz. They suggested a live Q&A session, a chance for Haley to connect directly with her fans and address the rumors. Flynn forwarded the request to me. "A live show, Sloan. That's a whole new level of risk. Your voice modulator, your mannerisms, you'd have to be perfect." I thought about it for a long moment. The risk was immense, but the potential for public exposure, for setting the final trap, was irresistible. This was the moment to make her a martyr, right before I pulled the rug out. "Agree to it," I told Flynn, my voice steady. "Tell them Haley is ready to face her truth." The day of the live stream felt like the longest day of my life. I was 22 and my hands were clammy, not from fear, but from the sheer exhilarating tension of it all. This was it, the public stage, the moment where Haley's carefully constructed, Sloan-orchestrated comeback would either soar or begin its spectacular descent. I had spent the last week meticulously preparing. Flynn, 25, had set up a secure, encrypted connection for the live stream, routing it through multiple servers to mask my true location. He'd also fine-tuned the voice modulator, making it seamless, almost undetectable. It would slightly deepen my voice and add Haley's signature breathy quality, but it was subtle enough that no one would suspect it wasn't her. My apartment, usually a mess of textbooks and diner uniforms, was transformed into a makeshift studio. The ring light was positioned perfectly, casting a soft glow that mimicked Haley's usual aesthetic. I wore a simple pastel-colored top, something Haley would choose for a vulnerable moment. My hair was styled in loose waves, just like hers. I even practiced her nervous fidgets, the way she'd tuck her hair behind her ear or bite her lip. I had a script prepared, a list of pre-written answers to anticipated questions. The beauty brand's marketing team had sent over a list of softball questions they wanted Haley to answer, focusing on her journey, her authenticity, and, of course, their products. I was ready. The live stream started. I sat in front of the camera, forcing a soft, slightly melancholic smile. The chat box exploded with comments. "Haley, you're so brave. We love you. Tell us everything," I started, voice modulated, carefully delivering my pre-scripted answers. I talked about finding my voice, about toxic influences, about learning to trust myself again. It was all vague, emotionally charged, and utterly meaningless, but the audience was eating it up. I even managed to weave in a few subtle plugs for the beauty brand, just enough to keep them happy. Then came the Q&A segment. The brand's moderator was feeding me questions from the chat, mostly the softballs. I was cruising, feeling a twisted sense of triumph. This was too easy. And then, a question popped up that wasn't on the list. It was from a user named Shiloh Fangirl. I recognized the name. Shiloh Nichols, 19, was one of Haley's most devoted fans, a sweet, naive girl who often posted gushing comments on Haley's old content. I had promised her a live shout-out earlier, a small, manipulative gesture to keep her engaged. The moderator, flustered, tried to skip it, but the question had already been highlighted by the system. It flashed across my screen. "What would you say to your cousin Sloan, who gave up everything so you could pursue your dream?" My blood ran cold. My carefully constructed composure shattered. The question was so specific, so utterly unexpected. It wasn't a softball. It was a direct hit. It was a reminder of the very real, very painful betrayal that had set this whole thing in motion. I froze. The voice modulator was still on, but my mind raced. What would Haley say? What could she possibly say to that? The new, authentic Haley couldn't just dismiss it. She had to acknowledge it, spin it. A wave of pure, unadulterated rage, the kind I usually kept locked down, surged through me. It was raw, unfiltered, and for a split second, I almost let it show. My jaw tightened. "Oh," I said, forcing a breathy, slightly choked sound. "Shiloh, that's a really personal question." I paused, letting the silence hang, letting the audience lean in. This was a moment. I had to use it. Sloan. My cousin Sloan. I forced a sigh, a heavy, burdened sound. "You know, I always envied Sloan. She was always so smart, so focused, so together." I made it sound like a flaw, a coldness. I always felt like I was living in her shadow, trying to find my own path. I leaned into the camera, my eyes welling up, a trick I'd perfected from watching Haley's old videos. And sometimes, when you're trying to find your path, You make mistakes. You hurt people even if you don't mean to. You have to follow your path even if it hurts people. I let a single, well-timed tear roll down my cheek. I just hope Sloan can understand that sometimes you have to prioritize your dreams even when it's hard. And I'm so sorry for any pain I caused. It was a masterpiece of manipulation. I had just publicly acknowledged the loan, twisted it into a narrative of my jealousy and Haley's unavoidable path to greatness, and then delivered a fake apology that shifted all the blame back onto me, the victim. The chat was flooded with "poor Haley" and "Sloan sounds like a hater." The moderator quickly jumped in, clearly relieved I hadn't gone off the rails, and steered the conversation back to the beauty products. I finished the live stream, my heart pounding, a grim satisfaction settling over me. I had turned the knife. Right after the show ended, as I was still disconnecting the equipment, my phone buzzed. It was my dad, Bowen, calling. His name flashed on the screen, an angry red beacon. I answered, my voice still slightly modulated, just in case. "Dad, what's up?" "Sloan, what the hell was that?" His voice was tight with panic. "Haley just called me screaming. She says she didn't do that interview. She says someone's impersonating her. Haley just called me screaming. She says she didn't do that interview. Haley says someone's impersonating her." My father's voice, Bowen, 52, crackled with barely contained panic through the phone. I allowed myself a small, satisfied smirk. This was it. The first crack in their carefully constructed delusion. "Dad, what are you talking about?" I feigned confusion, keeping my voice just a little too innocent. "Haley just finished her live Q&A. It was huge. Everyone's talking about it." "No, Sloan, you don't understand," he insisted, his voice rising. "Haley said she was at the mall with Poppy. She said she hasn't posted anything in weeks. She saw the live stream on her friend's phone and freaked out." "Well, that's weird," I said, drawing out the words. "Maybe she's just overwhelmed with the comeback. You know how she gets." "This isn't overwhelmed, Sloan. This is serious. She's talking about identity theft. Poppy's threatening to call the police." "The police?" I scoffed, letting a hint of my true self slip through. "For a podcast? Dad, come on. Haley's just being dramatic. Again." He hung up abruptly, probably to deal with the actual Haley. I disconnected the voice modulator and let out a long, slow breath. The trap was sprung. Within the hour, my phone started buzzing with calls from Poppy, 47, and Haley herself. I let them all go to voicemail. Their frantic, angry messages were music to my ears. They were finally realizing they'd been played. I called Flynn, 25. "It's happening," I told him. "They're panicking. Haley knows." "Good," he said, his voice calm. "I've been prepping the final release. We need to hit them hard and fast before they can coordinate a counter-narrative." The next morning, the storm broke. Poppy and Bowen confronted Haley, who was, predictably, in hysterics. She pulled up the live stream, the podcast episodes, the Instagram posts, all of it, screaming that it wasn't her. She swore she hadn't touched her accounts in months. "But you signed the waivers, Haley," I imagined my dad shouting. "For the crowdfunding, for the initial investments. You gave us media responsibility." That was the kicker. When they'd loaned Haley my college fund, they'd made her sign a stack of documents, standard for any large investment, giving them broad media responsibility and control over her brand for a period, just in case she tried to run off with the money or mess up a sponsorship. They thought they were protecting their investment. In reality, they'd signed away Haley's digital autonomy, making it legally murky for her to claim impersonation when her own family had been given a degree of control. Flynn had found those waivers and used them as a shield. They couldn't sue without admitting they'd essentially given someone, me, though they didn't know it, the legal right to manage Haley's digital presence. While they were unraveling, Flynn and I were preparing the final devastating blow. We drafted an anonymous digital press statement, carefully worded to sound like an insider with first-hand knowledge of the situation. It was released through a series of encrypted, untraceable channels, designed to go viral instantly. The statement was titled, "The Truth Behind Haley Sullivan's Comeback, a Story of Betrayal, Deception, and a Stolen Dream." It started by stating that the recent Haley Sullivan content was not created by Haley herself, but by the true creator of the recent Haley Sullivan podcast episodes. It then laid out my version of the story, cold and factual. It detailed how Sloane Sullivan, 22, had her entire college fund, meant for Columbia Law School, loaned by her father, Bowen Sullivan, 52, to her cousin, Haley Sullivan, 23. It included specific dates and amounts, pulled directly from my dad's bank statements that I had quietly accessed months ago, showing the transfers to Haley's account. It highlighted the $17.32 left in my fund. It then explained how Haley had squandered the money on a failed podcast, and how the recent comeback was a meticulously planned operation by the true creator to expose the family's favoritism and Haley's entitlement. It detailed the creation of the Voices Unfiltered nonprofit trust, explaining that all the new revenue, including the massive beauty brand deal, was legally bound to the trust, untouchable by Haley or her family. It highlighted the irony. Haley was now generating significant income for a charity she couldn't benefit from, all while believing she was making a personal comeback. The statement concluded with a scathing indictment of Bowen and Poppy, 47, for their complicity and their willingness to sacrifice one child's future for another's fleeting fame. It included snippets of their gushing group chat messages, proving their knowledge and approval of the loan. Flynn hit send. Within minutes, the internet exploded. News outlets, gossip blogs, and social media accounts picked up the story. The phrase, "Influencers Podcast Trust Frozen, Amid Fraud Investigation, Insider Reveals Explosive Truth," flashed across every major news aggregator. The fraud investigation part was a bit of a stretch, but the legal structure of the trust meant that with the public revelation, the funds would immediately be frozen pending an audit to ensure they were being used for their stated charitable purpose, effectively locking Haley out. My phone started ringing again, this time with unfamiliar numbers. Journalists, lawyers. I ignored them all. I just sat in my quiet apartment, watching the headlines scroll by, a profound sense of calm washing over me. The unraveling had begun. The day after Flynn, 25, released the anonymous press statement, the internet became a wildfire of outrage. Haley Sullivan, 23, wasn't just trending, she was a trending disaster. Every major news outlet, every gossip blog, every social media platform was dissecting the story. Influencers Podcast Trust Frozen. Amid fraud investigation, Insider Reveals Explosive Truth had been just the beginning. Now, new allegations swirled, fueled by the detailed information in the press statement. The beauty brand immediately pulled their sponsorship, citing unforeseen ethical concerns. The talent agency dropped Haley like a hot potato. The Voices Unfiltered Trust, now under intense scrutiny, had its funds frozen pending a full audit, effectively cutting off any access Haley might have dreamed of. The money was safe, legally bound, and completely out of her reach. The comments sections were brutal. People who had once praised her authenticity now condemned her as a fraud and a scammer. The story of the stolen college fund, the 1732, became a viral meme, a symbol of entitled influencer culture. Shiloh Nichols, 19, the naive fan who had asked the fateful question on the live stream, posted a tearful TikTok video expressing her devastation and anger at being lied to and manipulated. Her video alone got millions of views, adding fuel to the fire. My father, Bowen Sullivan, 52, was forced to step down from his company. The board, facing immense public pressure and a sudden drop in stock value due to his association with the scandal, gave him no choice. His carefully cultivated image as a respectable businessman was shattered. Poppy Sullivan, 47, Haley's mother, disappeared entirely from social media. Her last post was a photo of her perfectly manicured garden, now inundated with angry comments and accusations. The family group chat, once so vibrant with their self-congratulatory messages, fell silent. I watched it all unfold from my small apartment, a quiet, almost detached observer. The exhaustion of working 2 jobs and running this elaborate charade was immense, but the satisfaction was deeper. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about justice. They had underestimated me, dismissed me, and now they were paying the price. Then, an unexpected email landed in my inbox. It was from Ella Douglas, 56, the law school admissions counselor from Columbia. I'd sent her a follow-up email a few weeks ago, explaining my financial difficulties, without going into details, of course. The subject line read, "Scholarship offer, Columbia Law." My heart leaped into my throat. I opened it, my hands trembling. It was a full-ride scholarship based on exceptional academic merit, demonstrated resilience in the face of adversity, and a compelling personal narrative. The email subtly referenced the recent events and the ethical watchdog role I had apparently played, without explicitly naming the scandal. It was clear they had put 2 and 2 together, or at least appreciated the public exposure of financial malfeasance. My anonymous press statement had inadvertently made me a hero in certain circles. I stared at the screen, tears blurring my vision, not tears of sadness, but of overwhelming relief and a profound sense of vindication. All those sleepless nights, all the bitterness, all the calculated risks, it had paid off. My dream, which had been snatched away, was now within reach, secured by the very chaos I had orchestrated. I called Flynn. "It worked," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. "The scholarship. I got it." "I knew you would," he said, and I could hear the genuine pride in his voice. "You earned this, Sloan." "One last thing," I told him. "The final post, the statement from the real creator." We drafted it together. It was short, concise, and utterly damning. It confirmed that I, Sloan Sullivan, was the true creator of the recent Haley Sullivan podcast content. It reiterated the facts of the stolen college fund, the trust, and the family's complicity. It ended with a simple, chilling statement. This was not about fame. It was about justice. And now, I'm moving on. We scheduled it to go live just as I was leaving. The next morning, I packed my single suitcase. My apartment, stripped bare, felt lighter, freer. I was 22, and I was finally leaving for law school. I had a bus ticket to New York, a full scholarship, and a clean slate. I walked to the bus station, the early morning air crisp and cool. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was the final post, going live. I watched the first few comments roll in, a mix of shock, admiration, and outrage. My name, Sloan Sullivan, was now trending. Just as I boarded the bus, finding my seat by the window, my phone buzzed again. A direct message. Not from a journalist, not from a family member. It was from Haley. "Haley, Sloan, we need to talk. Meet me." I stared at the message, a strange mix of anticipation and finality washing over me. The bus pulled away from the curb, heading east. The bus pulled away, the city lights blurring into streaks outside the window. My phone buzzed again, Haley's direct message still on the screen. Haley, Sloan, we need to talk. Meet me. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to just let her sink into the oblivion she'd created for herself. But the other part, the part that had meticulously planned every single step of this revenge, knew I needed to see her face. I needed to see the culmination of my work. This wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about the years of being overlooked, of being the smart girl who figured things out, while Haley got everything handed to her. This was the final act. I texted her back. Where? She suggested a quiet diner in a neutral part of New York City, not far from where my bus would arrive. It was a few days before my law school orientation, giving me just enough time to settle into my new tiny dorm room before the meeting. I agreed. When I walked into the diner, Haley was already there, hunched over a cup of coffee, looking utterly miserable. She was still 23, but the carefully constructed influencer facade was gone. Her hair was limp, her eyes tired and red-rimmed. She wore a plain hoodie, no makeup, a stark contrast to the perfectly curated images I'd been posting of her online for weeks. The public humiliation had clearly taken its toll. She looked up as I approached, her gaze wary. Sloan. Her voice was flat, devoid of its usual breathy affectation. I slid into the booth opposite her. Haley. We sat in silence for a moment, the clatter of plates and low hum of conversation filling the void. Then she pushed her coffee cup away, her voice barely a whisper. Was it worth it? I met her gaze, unflinching. Was what worth it, Haley? My college fund? Your fake fame? Or this? I gestured vaguely around the diner, encompassing the wreckage of her public life. She flinched. All of it. Ruining my life. Ruining Dad's life. Poppy's. I didn't ruin your life, Haley. You did that when you squandered my future on a vanity project, I stated, my voice calm, almost clinical. I just accelerated the process. You wanted fame. I gave it to you. You wanted attention. You got it. You got the sponsorships, the viral moments, the headlines. I just made sure none of it benefited you personally. And then I made sure everyone knew the truth. But why? She pleaded, her voice cracking. We're family. Family? I scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping me. Family doesn't steal one person's life savings to fund another's delusions. Family doesn't play favorites so blatantly that one child is invisible. You got fame. I got justice. We both played roles, Haley. You just didn't realize yours was the one of the unwitting puppet. Her eyes welled up, but no tears fell. Poppy's in debt. She put money into my podcast too, you know. And Dad had to step down. His credit's ruined. They blame you, Sloan. They say you turned on family. I leaned back, crossing my arms. They blame me? Of course they do. It's always easier to blame the person who pulls back the curtain than to admit you were the one putting on the bad show. I didn't turn, Haley. I just stopped holding the weight of your lies. I stopped being the quiet, reliable one who would figure something out while you burned through everything. She looked away, defeated. I thought I was going to make it big. I was going to pay you back. No, you weren't, I said, cutting her off. You were going to make more excuses. You were going to find another time-sensitive opportunity to drain whatever was left. You always do. And Dad and Poppy would have let you because you're their star. The silence stretched between us again, heavier this time. She had nothing left to say. No more fake remorse, no more delusional plans, just the raw, exposed reality of her downfall. I stood up, pushing my chair back. I have to go. My orientation starts soon. Haley looked up, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes. Resentment? Understanding? I didn't care. Goodbye, Haley, I said. I walked out of the diner, leaving her alone with her coffee and her broken dreams. The New York City streets were bustling, full of life, full of possibilities. I was 22, and I was finally starting my life on my own terms. The scholarship was real, the law school acceptance was real, and the future was mine. Revenge doesn't heal betrayal. It doesn't magically erase the sting of being discarded or the years of feeling second best, but sometimes it balances the equation. It forces those who took to face what they've lost, and it allows those who were wrong to reclaim what was theirs. And walking away, knowing I had done exactly that, felt like the purest form of justice I could ever have.
The streetlights bled sickly yellow onto the cracked pavement, each one a tiny, mocking sun. Another double shift, another walk home, the city's exhaust fumes clinging to my clothes like a second skin. My name is Wendy, and I'm 29 years old, though some days I feel like I've lived 2 lifetimes already. One where I was a person, and another where I was just a ghost, haunting the edges of my family's perfect picture. Before I go on, comment below where in the world you're watching this from. Home was a converted garage behind a duplex I didn't own, rented from a landlord who probably forgot I existed half the time. It was small, smelled faintly of old oil and desperation, but it was mine. No shared walls with a family who saw right through me. I kicked off my worn sneakers by the door, the cheap rubber squeaking against the concrete floor. My phone buzzed in my hand, a familiar vibration. The family group chat. I almost didn't open it, but the morbid curiosity, that little itch of self-flagellation, always won out. It was a flurry of photos. Harmony, my younger sister, smiling brightly in pristine scrubs, a stethoscope draped artfully around her neck. Harmony's last clinical rotation, Mom had captioned it, followed by a string of heart emojis. So proud of our future doctor, Dad had added, a rare burst of enthusiasm from him. There were comments from aunts and uncles, all gushing about Harmony, about her brilliance, her dedication, her destiny. I scrolled past them, my thumbs numb, not a single mention of me. Not a, how's Wendy doing? Not a, did Wendy get home safe from her shift? Just Harmony. Always Harmony. She was 26 now, 3 years my junior, and the undisputed golden child. It wasn't a new feeling, this invisibility. It had started years ago, a slow, insidious fade. I remembered the day clearly. I was 18, fresh out of high school, clutching a brochure for the state university. Harmony, then 15, was in her room, the door shut, the muffled sounds of a therapist's voice seeping through. She'd been struggling with anxiety, Mom said, needed intensive support. Wendy, Mom, Linda, had said, her voice tight, avoiding my eyes. She was 53 then, already looking perpetually stressed. Your father and I, we just can't swing it. Not right now. Harmony's therapy bills, her special tutors. It's a lot. We can't waste more money on something that might not even pan out. Waste more money? I'd echoed, my voice barely a whisper. I'd worked my ass off in high school, straight A's, scholarships lined up. Dad, Felix, then 56, sat silently, flipping through a newspaper, his usual passive support of whatever Linda decreed. He looked up briefly, a flicker of guilt in his eyes, before retreating behind the newsprint. You're so resourceful, Wendy, Mom had continued, already moving on. You'll figure it out. Get a job. Save up. Harmony, she needs us. She's delicate. You're strong. Strong. That was the word they used to justify every burden they piled on me, every sacrifice they demanded. Strong enough to work 2 jobs right out of high school, strong enough to put off my own dreams indefinitely, strong enough to watch Harmony glide through life, every door opened for her, every whim indulged. I'd figured it out, all right. I'd gotten a job, then another, then a third. I'd saved, I'd learned, I'd built. All while they were busy polishing their golden girl. Now, years later, the bitterness wasn't a raging fire anymore. It was a cold, steady hum beneath my skin, like a low-grade fever. It was in the weary sarcasm that coded my thoughts, in the tight smile I offered when my mother inevitably called to ask if I could pick up Harmony's dry cleaning. I tossed my phone onto my makeshift bed, a futon I'd bought used. My eyes landed on the small, unassuming painting hanging on the wall, a cheap landscape bought for $5 at a flea market. Most people would see a dusty piece of art. I saw a door. I reached behind the canvas, my fingers finding the familiar latch. The painting swung open, revealing a shallow recess in the wall. Inside, nestled amongst some old tools and a few emergency bills, was a small, heavy-duty safe. Not a fancy one, just a basic, fireproof box. I spun the dial, the clicks echoing in the quiet garage. The latch sprang open with a soft thud. Inside, on top of a stack of investment statements and legal documents, lay a single, crisp, white envelope. I pulled it out, my fingers tracing the embossed seal. The contents were familiar, yet still held a potent and almost electric charge. I slid out the thick paper, unfolded it carefully. It was the deed. The official, notarized deed to a luxury condo downtown, a place with floor-to-ceiling windows, a concierge, and a view of the city skyline that would make anyone gasp. And there, printed clearly as the owner, was the name, Harmony Nelson. My lips curved into a slow, tired smile. Harmony Nelson, the future doctor, the golden child, the one who never had to lift a finger. She thought that apartment, that symbol of her parents' boundless generosity, was hers. She thought they'd gifted it to her, a reward for her tireless pursuit of medical excellence. But I knew the truth. Every single penny, every single mortgage payment, every single tax bill that kept that deed in Harmony's name had come from me. From the double shifts, the late nights, the scraped knees and burning eyes. From the very labor my family dismissed as just Wendy. I folded the deed back into the envelope, the paper rustling softly. It was Harmony's name on it, yes. But it was my property, my revenge. And soon everyone would know. The deed, tucked back into its safe, felt like a secret heartbeat in the wall. It wasn't just a piece of paper. It was a ledger, meticulously recording every slight, every dismissal, every single hour I'd spent building a life my family swore I couldn't have. They called me strong, a convenient label that meant we don't have to worry about her. And for years, I let them believe it. The first few years after high school were a blur of fluorescent lights and aching muscles. I was 18, then 19, then 20, watching my peers head off to dorms and frat parties while I scrubbed dried coffee rings off countertops. I worked at a diner from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., then cleaned offices until 10 p.m. Weekends were for retail, folding clothes until my fingers cramped. My hands were always chapped, my hair perpetually smelling of stale grease and disinfectant. It was during one of those late-night cleaning shifts, wiping down a deserted real estate office, that I saw a familiar face. Presley Willis. He was a year older than me, had been a quiet kid in high school, always sketching in the back of class. Now he was wearing a sharp suit, looking impossibly put together even at midnight. He'd stayed late, hunched over a desk, a laptop glowing in front of him. "Wendy?" he'd said, looking up, surprised. "What are you doing here?" I'd mumbled something about a side gig. He just nodded, then offered me a coffee from the machine. We talked for an hour, the hum of the office building around us. He'd gone to a community college, then gotten into real estate development. He wasn't flashy, but he was smart, and he saw things differently. "You know, Wendy," he'd said, swirling his lukewarm coffee, "you're working harder than most people with 2 degrees. You should be working for yourself." He told me about tax auctions, about distressed properties, about how to leverage small savings into something bigger. He didn't offer to do it for me, but he laid out a map. He became my quiet mentor, a sounding board for my insane ideas, always pushing me to learn, to analyze, to take the calculated risk. He was 30 now, a successful developer, and still, he never asked for anything in return. He just seemed to genuinely believe in me. So, I started small. A tiny, run-down house bought at auction, fixed up with my own hands on weekends, then rented out, then another, and another. By day, I was still the just okay Wendy, the one who worked a bunch of odd jobs. By night, I was running spreadsheets, analyzing markets, and learning every legal loophole I could find. My parents, Linda now 64 and Felix 67, never asked for details. They just nodded, vaguely pleased that I was independent. It meant they didn't have to think about me. The illusion was easy to maintain. I kept my garage apartment, drove my beat up car, and always made sure to look just tired enough to seem like I was still struggling, but not so much that they'd feel guilty. Harmony, meanwhile, was sailing through med school, her life a curated Instagram feed of study groups, exotic vacations, and increasingly expensive gifts from our parents. She was 26 now, 3 years my junior, still the center of their universe. Then came the call. My mother, Linda, her voice practically vibrating with excitement. Wendy, darling, Harmony's graduation gala. Can you believe it? My little girl, a doctor. I mumbled congratulations. I'd known it was coming. This was the culmination of years of parental investment, both financial and emotional. Of course you'll be there, Mom continued, not really asking. We need all hands on deck. Harmony wants it to be perfect. You can help with the setup, maybe help pour drinks. You're so good with people. Pour drinks. My lips twitched. The woman who owned half a dozen properties, who was paying the mortgage on her golden daughter's luxury condo, was being asked to pour drinks at the celebration of her sister's success. It was almost poetic. Sure, Mom, I said, my voice sweet, just the right amount of weary enthusiasm. Whatever Harmony needs. A week later, I found myself sitting at the polished dining table in my parents' house, the same table where I'd been told I was too expensive to educate. Harmony, radiant and oblivious, was going over seating charts with Mom, discussing floral arrangements and catering options. Dad sat quietly, occasionally nodding when prompted. We're thinking a string quartet for the cocktail hour, Harmony announced, tapping a manicured finger on a diagram. It just screams sophistication, don't you think? Absolutely, sweetie, Mom cooed. Only the best for our doctor. She turned to me, a bright, brittle smile on her face. You know, Wendy, looking at Harmony, it just makes you so proud. All her hard work, all her dedication. She's really made something of herself. I took a slow sip of water. She certainly has. Mom chuckled, a light dismissive sound. Maybe someday you'll surprise us too, Wendy. You know, really make something of yourself. I met her gaze, held it for a beat too long. Then I smiled. A wide, genuine smile that didn't reach my eyes. Maybe, Mom, I said. Maybe I will. The smile I'd given Mom at the dinner table felt like a physical shield, deflecting her casual dismissal. It was a practice smile, honed over years of being the strong one, the independent one, but beneath it a final cold calculation was forming. I needed to know definitively if there was any flicker of concern for me, any residual sense of parental obligation left in them. The next morning, I sent a text to the family group chat. Hey everyone, quick question. My car's making a weird noise. Think it's the alternator. Mechanic quoted me $200 for the part. Anyone able to spot me for it? I can pay you back next month. I knew the answer before I even sent it. My beat-up sedan was a constant reminder of my struggle, a convenient prop in the narrative they'd built around me. The replies came swiftly. Dad, Felix, now 67, messaged first, within 5 minutes. Oh, that's a shame, Wendy. Car troubles are the worst. Hope you get it sorted. No offer of help, just platitudes. Mom, Linda, 64, chimed in moments later. Oh, honey, you're so resourceful. You always figure these things out. Remember when you fixed that leaky faucet in your garage apartment? You're the independent one. We just paid off Harmony's last semester, you know. Tuition is astronomical these days. Astronomical. I stared at the screen, a dry laugh escaping my lips. Harmony's last semester, the one that cost more than my entire year's income from my first 2 jobs, the one that was paid for by them while I was out there buying distressed properties and building a portfolio they knew nothing about. My test was complete. The answer was a resounding, familiar no. They wouldn't even part with $200 for my car, not when their golden goose needed polishing. I sighed, setting my phone down. The alternator wasn't actually broken. It was just a test, and they'd failed, predictably. Later that day, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was an unfamiliar number. Hey, this is Christian. I just got a text about an eviction meeting for my place on Elm Street. Is this a mistake? I paid rent on the first. I frowned. Elm Street. That was one of my properties, a multi-unit condo building I'd bought 2 years ago. I managed the leases through a property management company, but I kept my own records. I checked my notes. Christian Horton, Unit 3B, rent paid on time, no eviction notice sent. This is Wendy, I texted back. I'm the owner of the Elm Street property. There's no eviction meeting scheduled for you. Your rent is paid? Are you sure you got that text from the right number? A moment later, my phone rang. It was the same unfamiliar number. I answered. Wendy? A male voice asked, a hint of confusion and surprise in his tone. Christian Horton. Wait, you're the owner? My management company gave me this number for property owner inquiries. I thought it was some corporate office. He sounded about my age, maybe a bit older. 31, the outline said. It's me, I confirmed, a slight amusement in my voice. And no, you're not getting evicted. Looks like a wrong number sent you that text. Probably a typo from the management company. Sorry about that. No, it's fine, he said, and I could hear the gears turning in his head. It's just, wow. I mean, I figured the owner was some old dude in a suit. You're not what I expected. Is that a compliment or a complaint? I asked, leaning back against the garage wall. He chuckled. Definitely a compliment. Look, I'm actually at the building right now. Just came to check my mail. Could I buy you a coffee? Just to apologize for the mistaken panic? I hesitated. My usual routine involved avoiding any unnecessary social interaction, but Christian's voice was genuinely curious, not pushy, and a coffee wasn't a huge commitment. Sure, I said. Give me 20 minutes. I'll meet you at the coffee shop on the corner. When I arrived, he was already there, nursing a black coffee. He was tall, with kind eyes and a slightly rumpled charm that suggested he didn't spend too much time worrying about appearances. He'd failed out of med school, the outline mentioned. That explained the slightly lost, yet intelligent air about him. So, he said after we'd settled, you own the whole building. Parts of it, I corrected, not wanting to give away too much. I started small, built up over time. He nodded, impressed. That's really something. Most people my age are still trying to figure out how to pay off student loans. I know I am. He gave a wry smile. Used to be on a different path myself. Med school. Didn't quite work out. We talked for a while longer, about the city, about the absurdities of life. He didn't pry, just listened and offered his own, surprisingly insightful observations. It was a strange friendship, born from a mistaken text and a shared coffee, but it felt easy. As I walked back to my garage apartment later, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was an unknown number, but the text had a familiar attachment, a PDF of a drink menu for Harmony's gala. Hey, Wendy, the text read. It's Julia Mann, Harmony's med school friend. I designed the drink menu for the gala, but I swear that girl is driving me insane. She treats the event staff like dirt. Just thought you might find this interesting. Maybe I'll see you there. Good luck. Julia Mann. Harmony's best friend. 23 years old, according to the outline, and apparently she hated Harmony enough to slip me a copy of the gala's drink menu, a small, passive-aggressive act of rebellion. This was unexpected, a crack in Harmony's perfect facade, delivered by someone on the inside. My smile widened. The game was truly afoot. The gala was set for a Saturday night. I arrived hours early, just as Mom had suggested, dressed in the black uniform of the event staff. A crisp white shirt, black pants, and sensible shoes. My hair was pulled back in a tight ponytail. I looked exactly like what they expected, a hired hand. The ballroom was already buzzing with activity. Caterers were arranging platters, Florists were putting the finishing touches on elaborate centerpieces, and a sound crew was testing microphones. Harmony, 26 and looking perfectly poised even in a casual dress, was already there, directing everyone with the air of a benevolent dictator. She barely glanced my way as I walked past, carrying a stack of linen napkins. "Oh, Wendy, good, you're here," Mom, Linda, now 64, said, bustling over. She was already dressed in a shimmering gown, her face alight with a manic energy. "Can you help set up the champagne flutes? Harmony wants them arranged in a pyramid." I nodded, already moving towards the bar area. "Sure, Mom." The hours crawled by. I arranged flutes, polished silverware, and helped carry trays. Harmony floated around, occasionally stopping to complain about a misplaced napkin or a slightly crooked flower. Her voice, usually sweet, took on a sharp edge when addressing the staff. Julia Mann's text about Harmony treating staff badly echoed in my mind. It seemed Julia hadn't been exaggerating. Around lunchtime, the family gathered in a private dining room adjacent to the main ballroom. Just Mom, Dad, Harmony, and me. Dad, Felix, 67, looked uncomfortable, picking at his salad. Mom, however, was beaming. "Harmony, darling," she began, her voice dripping with adoration. "Your father and I have something for you." Harmony's eyes lit up. She was like a magpie, drawn to anything shiny. Mom pulled out a small velvet-covered box from her purse. It looked old, worn at the edges. "This," Mom said, opening the box to reveal a delicate antique silver bracelet intricately carved with tiny floral patterns, "was your great-grandmother's. It's been passed down through generations of women in our family. We wanted you to have it today as you embark on your incredible journey. It symbolizes the legacy you're building, the strength and wisdom you carry." Harmony gasped, her fingers trembling as she took the bracelet. "Mom, Dad, it's beautiful. Thank you, thank you." She immediately fastened it around her wrist, admiring it. I watched, my expression neutral. No one looked at me. No one offered me a legacy bracelet. My legacy was the calloused hands and the silent spreadsheets. My strength was the kind that got you left behind. I picked up a champagne cork that had popped earlier during a test pour, turning it over in my fingers. It was nothing, just compressed wood, but I pocketed it anyway. A small, meaningless trophy. As the afternoon wore on, guests began to arrive for the pre-gala reception. I was stationed near the bar, pouring champagne, my face a polite, professional mask. The air filled with the murmur of polite conversation, the clinking of glasses. "Wendy?" a voice said, low and surprised. I turned. Christian Horton, 31. He was wearing a crisp white shirt and black vest, a bar towel slung over his arm. "Christian?" I said, genuinely surprised. "What are you doing here?" He gave a wry smile. "Extra money. I bartend sometimes. Didn't realize you'd be working the event." He gestured vaguely at my uniform. "Or working this event specifically." "Small world," I said, trying to keep my voice even. My cover, the "Just Okay" Wendy, was starting to crack. People were noticing me. "Yeah," he said, his eyes lingering on me for a moment. "Small world, and you're in a lot of unexpected places." He didn't sound judgmental, just curious. He moved to the other end of the bar, starting to mix drinks, occasionally glancing my way. A few minutes later, Julia Mann, 23, breezed past, looking harried. She caught my eye, gave a quick conspiratorial wink, and then disappeared into the crowd. She was still on my side, it seemed. The reception was in full swing. Harmony was holding court, surrounded by adoring relatives and proud professors. My parents beamed, their faces flushed with pride. I kept pouring, kept smiling, kept blending in. When there was a lull, I slipped away to the staff restroom, needing a moment to myself. The small, sterile room offered a brief respite from the glittering chaos outside. I locked the door, leaned against the cool tiles, and pulled something from the inner pocket of my black pants. It was a small, velvet box. Not antique, not passed down through generations, just a simple, modern box, the kind you'd get from a high-end jeweler. I flipped open the lid. Inside, Nestled on a bed of white satin was not a bracelet, not a necklace. It was a single, folded piece of paper. I unfolded it carefully, my thumb tracing the elegant script. It was the property deed, the one for the luxury condo. Harmony Nelson's name was scrawled across the top in bold, gold lettering like a proclamation, but below it, in smaller, almost invisible print, were the initials W.N. Wendy Nelson, the true owner, the one who had paid for it all. I closed the box, the soft click echoing in the small room. The time for quiet resentment was over. The ceremony itself was a blur of academic robes and proud parents. I stood at the back of the auditorium, blending into the crowd of other event staff. Harmony, 26, was one of the student speakers. Her voice, amplified by the microphone, was clear and confident, every word perfectly enunciated. To my incredible parents, Linda and Felix Nelson, she began, her gaze sweeping over the audience, landing on my mother, Linda, 64, who dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. Your unwavering support, your endless sacrifices, your belief in me even when I doubted myself, it has been the bedrock of my success. This degree is as much yours as it is mine. She went on, a rehearsed monologue about dedication, the future of medicine, and the privilege of service. It was polished, robotic, dripping in the kind of parental sound bites Mom had probably coached her on for weeks. There was no genuine emotion, just a performance for the audience, for the cameras, for the image. It was exactly what I expected. During a break between speeches, I slipped out to the hallway, needing a breath of fresh air. That's when I saw Julia Mann, 23, leaning against a wall, scrolling through her phone. She looked tired, her usual catty energy subdued. "Hey," I said, walking up to her. She looked up, surprised, then offered a small, knowing smile. "Hey, Wendy. Still on staff duty?" "Someone has to be," I replied, a dry edge to my voice. Harmony's speech was inspiring. Julia snorted. "Inspiringly fake, maybe. She's been practicing that unwavering support line for months. You know, she used to brag about her apartment, said she never paid rent. Daddy always fixes it, like it was some kind of badge of honor." My jaw tightened. I knew. I knew exactly who fixed it. "She really thinks her parents bought it for her?" "Oh, absolutely," Julia confirmed, rolling her eyes. "She thinks they're loaded, and that she's the only reason they'd ever spend money. She's so entitled, it's sickening. Honestly, I'm surprised she even let you come to the gala, given how she usually talks about you." "Oh?" I prompted, keeping my voice casual. "Yeah. Wendy's just doing her own thing. She's fine. She doesn't need us." That kind of stuff. Like you're some charity case they occasionally acknowledge. Julia paused, then looked at me, a mischievous glint in her eyes. "You know, for the gala tonight, I could probably rig up a mic in that gift box, just for a little dramatic flair when she opens it." I considered it for a moment. The thought of Harmony's shocked gasp amplified for the entire room was tempting. But no, that wasn't my style. I wanted the truth to be naked, unadorned by theatrics. I wanted the silence, the slow realization, to be the loudest sound in the room. "Thanks, Julia," I said, "but I think I'll pass on the mic. I want this to be personal." She shrugged. "Suit yourself. Just offering. She deserves whatever's coming to her." "She does," I agreed. "By the way, do you have a spare pen?" She rummaged in her bag, pulled out a cheap ballpoint. "Here." I took it, then pulled out a blank card from my pocket, the kind that came with a gift. I thought for a moment, then wrote a single, pointed line in neat, clear script. "Any idea who's been paying your rent?" I didn't sign it. There was no need. The gift itself would be the signature. Just as I was tucking the card back into the velvet box, my phone buzzed. It was Presley Willis, 30 years old. "Hey, Wendy," he said, his voice brisk. "Just got off the phone with the title company. Everything's finalized. Your name is still on the real deed, the one that matters. The one with the actual equity. Harmony's just got the cosmetic one. Want to flip the keys early?" My heart gave a little jolt. The cosmetic deed was the one I'd had drawn up for the reveal, the one with Harmony's name prominently displayed as the owner, but with the small, almost invisible UN initials indicating the true financial backing. The real deed, the one Presley was talking about, was locked away in a safe deposit box, unequivocally in my name. This was it. The final piece of the puzzle. "No, Presley," I said, my voice calm, steady. "Not yet. Let's stick to the plan. Tonight." "Got it," he said. "Good luck. You earned this." I hung up, a slow smile spreading across my face. The gala was about to begin. Harmony was about to receive the biggest gift of her life, and it was going to cost her everything. The ballroom glittered under the chandeliers. Guests dressed in their finest mingled with champagne flutes in hand. The string quartet played a classical piece that felt entirely too cheerful for the storm brewing beneath the surface. I moved through the crowd, a phantom in my black uniform, collecting empty glasses, refilling water. Harmony, 26, arrived fashionably late, sweeping in with my parents, Linda, 64, and Felix, 67, on either side. A ripple of applause followed her. She was the toast of the town, the golden girl, bathed in the spotlight she'd been groomed for. I watched from the periphery as she greeted professors, shook hands with family friends, her smile bright and unwavering. My parents beamed, their faces radiating an almost blinding pride. This was their moment, their triumph, built on my quiet sacrifices. The dinner service began. I served plates, cleared dishes, my movements precise and efficient. I could feel Christian Horton, 31, at the bar, his eyes occasionally finding mine. He looked curious, a silent question in his gaze. Julia Mann, 23, was seated at a table near the front, already on her phone, a small, knowing smirk playing on her lips. Then came the toasts. Several professors spoke, praising Harmony's intellect and dedication. Then my father Felix stood, clearing his throat. He spoke briefly, his voice a little shaky, about how proud he was of his daughter. Then he handed the microphone to my mother. Linda, 64, took the mic, her voice ringing out, clear and strong. "To Harmony," she began, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Our Harmony. She has always been a beacon of light, a testament to what hard work and perseverance can achieve. She is not just a success, she is the only success our family has ever truly known. She has fulfilled every dream we ever had for her, and more." The words hung in the air, heavy and deliberate. The only success. My hand, holding a tray of empty glasses, didn't tremble. This was it, the final, definitive dismissal. I took a deep breath. My moment. I walked calmly towards the head table, a practiced, polite smile on my face. "Excuse me, Mom," I said, my voice sweet, a little louder than necessary, but still soft enough to sound like an innocent interruption. I reached the table, the velvet box clutched in my left hand, hidden from view by my body. Linda turned, startled, her perfect smile faltering. "Wendy? What is it, dear? I'm making a toast." "I know, Mom," I said, my smile widening. "And it's a beautiful toast. But before everyone raises their glasses, I just wanted to contribute a small gift to Harmony, a little something to celebrate her success and all the hard work that went into it." I stepped forward, placing the velvet box directly in front of Harmony, pushing aside a champagne flute. Harmony, caught off guard, looked from me to the box, a flicker of confusion in her eyes. The room had gone quiet, a few murmurs rippling through the tables. All eyes were on us. "Wendy, what is this?" Harmony asked, her voice a little strained. "Just a little something," I repeated, my voice barely a whisper, for her ears alone. "Open it." Harmony hesitated for a moment. Then, with a forced smile for the audience, she reached for the box. Her fingers, adorned with the antique bracelet, flipped open the lid. Her eyes widened, then narrowed. The color drained from her face. The card, the one I'd written, fluttered from the box and landed silently on the pristine white tablecloth. It landed face up. "Any idea who's been paying your rent?" A few guests closest to the table leaned forward, trying to read the card. A low murmur started like the buzzing of a disturbed hive. Felix, 67, who had been sitting quietly, leaned over, his brow furrowed. He saw the deed, then the card. His eyes snapped to mine, a mixture of shock and dawning horror. Linda, 64, dropped her champagne glass. It hit the floor with a dull thud, the liquid spreading like a stain on the carpet. No one seemed to notice. Harmony's breath hitched. She looked at the deed, then at the card, then at me, her face a mask of disbelief. What is this? She choked out, her voice barely audible. I leaned in close, my voice a soft, venomous whisper for her ears, for my parents' ears, for anyone close enough to catch it. You didn't think med school was free, did you, Harmony? Or that luxury apartment? Someone had to pay for it. Someone always pays. The family table erupted. Linda let out a strangled cry. Felix pushed back his chair, a strangled sound in his throat. Harmony's face crumpled, her eyes filling with tears of rage and humiliation. From across the room, I saw Julia Mann, 23, discreetly holding up her phone, recording. Christian Horton, 31, stood frozen behind the bar, his eyes wide, watching me. I turned, my back to the chaos, and walked away. Every single head in that ballroom turned, following my retreating figure. I didn't look back. I just kept walking, a slow, satisfied smile spreading across my face. The golden illusion had just shattered. The walk out of that ballroom felt like floating. The murmurs, the gasps, the choked cries from the head table, they were just background noise to the quiet hum of satisfaction in my ears. I didn't run. I didn't even rush. I simply walked, one foot in front of the other, through the stunned crowd, out the main doors, and into the cool night air. The city lights seemed brighter, sharper. My phone started buzzing before I even reached the street. It was a flurry of texts and missed calls, mostly from numbers I didn't recognize. The first few were from distant relatives, confused and asking what had happened. Then came the messages from my parents. Linda, 64, texted first. Wendy, what did you do? Call me now. This is a disaster. Felix, 67, followed quickly. Wendy, please, we need to talk. This is not how we handle things. I ignored them all. I walked until I found a quiet bench in a small park, the kind with patchy grass and a broken swing set. I sat down, pulled out my phone, and opened social media. It was already ablaze. Julia Mann, 23, had been efficient. An anonymous account, Gala Truth Teller, had uploaded a shaky video. It started just as I handed Harmony the box. You could hear my mother's startled cry, Harmony's choked question, and my low, clear whisper. You didn't think med school was free, did you, Harmony? Or that luxury apartment? Someone had to pay for it. Someone always pays. The video had gone viral within minutes. Comments were flooding in, outrage, disbelief, a surprising amount of support. OMG, the sister snapped. She paid for her own sister's apartment. That's next level. The parents' faces, though. My phone rang. It was Christian Horton, 31. I hesitated, then answered. Wendy, are you okay? His voice was laced with concern, but also a strange undercurrent of awe. I'm fine, I said, my voice steady. Better than fine, actually? I saw it, he said, and I could hear the faint murmur of a crowd in the background, probably still at the gala. I saw everything. That was something else. I mean, wow. Yeah, I said, a small smile playing on my lips. It was. I have to ask, he continued, his voice a little softer. What will it cost you? To do something like that? I paused, looking up at the night sky. Everything, maybe, and nothing. It depends on how you look at it. He was quiet for a moment. Well, whatever it costs, it was definitely a mic drop. I'm impressed, seriously. Thanks, Christian, I said, a genuine warmth spreading through me. I appreciate that. We talked for a few more minutes, a strange, quiet conversation in the aftermath of the explosion. He didn't ask for details, didn't judge, he just listened. It was a new feeling, having someone witness my truth without flinching. I hung up, then scrolled through the news feeds. The story was already being picked up by local news outlets. Family drama erupts at medical school graduation gala. Sister reveals secret apartment ownership. My name, Wendy Nelson, was suddenly everywhere. The invisible older sister was now the most talked about Nelson. Then came the call I'd been anticipating. Harmony. Her number flashed on the screen. I let it ring, and ring, and ring. Finally, it went to voicemail. A moment later, a text came through. You bitch, what did you do? My residency. They just called me. They pulled the offer. Integrity issues? This is your fault. I hate you. I hate you so much. I read the text, my smile unwavering. Her residency. Pulled. The carefully constructed future, built on lies and unearned privilege, crumbling. It was exactly what I'd hoped for. The consequences were swift, brutal, and entirely her own making. My phone dinged again. It was a message from my mother, Linda. Not a call, not a frantic plea. A cold, carefully worded text. We always wondered when you'd bite the hand that fed you. I stared at the words. The hand that fed you. The hand that had starved me, dismissed me, used me as a convenient prop for their golden child. The hand that had never offered me $200 for a car repair, but had poured hundreds of thousands into Harmony's illusion. I laughed, a quiet, bitter sound that echoed in the empty park. I was not biting the hand that fed me. I was simply collecting on a very, very old debt. I stood up, feeling a lightness I hadn't felt in years. The garage apartment, my 3 jobs, the constant struggle, it all felt like a distant memory. I was no longer the ghost. I was the one pulling the strings. I walked towards the downtown skyline, towards the luxury condo that was legally mine, the one Harmony thought was hers. I knew I couldn't go in tonight. Not yet, but soon. My phone continued to ding, a constant stream of notifications. But for the first time in a long time, I felt a profound sense of peace. I sat alone in the park, the city lights twinkling around me, and let the chaos rage. It was only just beginning. The days that followed the gala were a whirlwind. My phone, once a silent accessory, was now a constant source of pings and notifications. The story had exploded beyond local news, picked up by national human interest segments and online forums. I was no longer invisible. I was a headline. My family hadn't spoken to me directly since Mom's cold text. Harmony, 26, had moved out of the luxury condo within a week, the humiliation too much to bear. She'd found a shared apartment uptown, a stark contrast to the amenities she'd grown accustomed to. Her social media, once a curated masterpiece, was now private, her public image shattered. My parents, Linda, 64, and Felix, 67, were dealing with the fallout, trying to manage the whispers and the pointed questions from their social circle. I heard through the grapevine that they were telling people I'd had a nervous breakdown and that the whole thing was a misunderstanding. I just smiled, let them spin their stories. The truth was out there. Presley Willis, 30, called me a few days after the gala. "You're famous, Wendy." He chuckled. "My old high school friend, the real estate mogul. Got a call from a small business podcast. They want to profile you. Said they heard about your unconventional path to success. I mentioned your name, of course. I agreed to the interview. It was an opportunity to tell my story, my way, without the filter of family narratives. I spoke about the years of hard work, the calculated risks, the quiet building of wealth. I didn't mention Harmony by name or the specific incident, but the subtext was clear. I was the one who had built something from nothing, while others had simply inherited illusions. Christian Horton, 31, became a more frequent presence in my life. He'd text me silly memes, ask about my day, or just offer a quiet observation. He never brought up the gala directly, but there was an unspoken understanding between us, a shared acknowledgement of the raw, exposed truth I'd laid bare. He saw me, truly saw me, not as the strong one, not as the invisible one, but as Wendy. One evening, he asked if I wanted to grab dinner. Nothing fancy, just a quiet place near my garage apartment. We talked for hours about his failed med school dreams, about his bartending gigs, about his quiet ambition to start a small business. He listened intently when I spoke about my properties, my plans for expansion. There was a cautious romance beginning to bloom, rooted in mutual respect and a shared understanding of what it felt like to be underestimated, to have to fight for every inch. It was slow, tentative, but real. He didn't try to fix me or even understand the depths of my bitterness. He just accepted it, and me as I was. My tone these days was calmer, more satisfied. Not euphoric, not triumphant in a loud, boisterous way, just a deep, quiet contentment. The gnawing resentment, the constant ache of invisibility, had finally receded. The ledger was balanced, the debt was paid. A few weeks after the gala, I found myself driving past my old garage apartment. The "for rent" sign was gone. Someone new lived there now, another struggling soul trying to make ends meet. I pulled over, parked down the street, and walked towards it. The door, once so familiar, seemed smaller now, almost quaint. It creaked open easily when I pushed it. The garage was empty. The futon was gone, the makeshift shelves cleared out. The small, unassuming painting that had hidden my safe was gone too, taken by the new tenant, perhaps. The wall where the safe had been was just bare drywall. Quiet. So quiet. I stepped inside, the faint smell of old oil still lingering, a ghost of my past. This cramped, forgotten space had been my sanctuary, my secret laboratory, the crucible where my revenge had been forged. It had been a tomb for my resentment and a womb for my ambition. I stood there for a long moment, taking it all in. The silence was profound, a stark contrast to the constant noise of my phone, the endless chatter of the world outside. There was no bitterness left here, no lingering anger, just a quiet sense of finality. I turned, walked out, and gently pulled the door shut behind me, the creak echoing in the stillness. You only sleep fine when the lights are off, the door's locked, and the debts are paid.
The smell of burnt meatloaf still makes me smile, even now. It was the last good memory I had of Mom, just the two of us in the kitchen of the old house. I was 26 then, home for a visit, trying to impress her with a recipe I'd found online. The smoke alarm had wailed, Mom had shrieked with laughter, and we'd ended up ordering pizza, eating it on paper plates at the kitchen island, our faces streaked with flour and tears of mirth. That was 8 months ago. Now, the memory feels like a cruel trick, a ghost of a life I no longer have. My name is Willow Hunt, and I turned 27 2 months after Mom's funeral. For the past 8 months, grief has been my constant companion, a heavy blanket I pulled over myself, shutting out the world. After the funeral, I'd retreated to my small apartment across town, barely answering calls, letting the silence of my own space swallow me whole. I didn't want to see anyone, talk to anyone, especially not family. My mother, Zariah, had been the only real family I had left, and without her, the world felt like a muted, distant hum. Before I go on, comment below where in the world you're watching this from. I'd spent weeks just existing, scrolling mindlessly through social media, trying to find a distraction from the ache in my chest. That's how I first saw it. A photo, posted by someone I didn't recognize, but the background. It hit me like a physical blow. It was my old bedroom, my childhood bedroom. But it wasn't mine anymore. The walls were a garish pink, the old floral curtains replaced with something sparkly. And there, in the middle of the room, striking a pose with a wide fake smile, was Jasmine Barnes. Jasmine Barnes, my Uncle Shane's new girlfriend. She was also 27, just like me, but that's where the similarities ended. She was all sharp angles and manufactured cheer, the kind of person who documented every single moment of her life online. And now, she was documenting my life. The photos kept coming. A pool party in the backyard, where my old tire swing used to hang from the oak tree. My mother's rose garden, now ripped up and replaced with a concrete patio. Each picture was a fresh stab, a public desecration of everything I held sacred. My home, my mother's sanctuary. It was like watching someone dismantle my memories, piece by piece, and then parade them around for likes. I tried to ignore it, to tell myself it didn't matter. The house was just a house. But it wasn't. It was Mom. It was us. Then, 2 months ago, a thick envelope arrived in the mail. No return address, just my name typed neatly on the front. Inside, nestled among official-looking papers, was a copy of a deed. The deed to my childhood home. My eyes scanned the document, my breath catching in my throat. The transfer date was 6 months ago, just 2 months after Mom had passed. And the sale price? $14,000. $14,000. For a house in a desirable suburban neighborhood, a house Mom had poured her life into. It was a joke, a cruel, sick joke. The buyer listed was Jasmine Barnes. My hands shook as I dialed Shane's number. My mother's older brother, my Uncle Shane Wallace, 45 years old and perpetually looking for an angle. He'd always been estranged, a shadowy figure on the periphery of our lives, only resurfacing when he needed something. My mother had tolerated him, but I'd always felt a prickle of unease around him. Now that unease curdled into pure rage. He answered on the third ring, his voice gruff. "Willow, to what do I owe the pleasure?" "The house, Shane," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "What did you do?" There was a beat of silence, then a sigh. "Oh, that. Look, Willow, it was just sitting there. You weren't using it. Jasmine needed a place and it was a good deal for her." "A quick cash sale. No fuss." "A good deal?" I practically spat the words. $14,000? That house is worth 10 times that, at least. How could you just sell it? It was Mom's. "Look, Zariah didn't have a will, things were complicated," he said, his voice taking on that dismissive tone he always used when he wanted to shut down a conversation. "I handled everything. It's done. Move on." "Move on?" My voice rose, cracking with disbelief. "You sold my home to your girlfriend for pocket change? You didn't even tell me?" "You were grieving, Willow," he said, a patronizing edge to his voice. "I didn't want to bother you with the details. It was just a house. You weren't living there." He hung up before I could respond. Just a house. He truly believed that. He truly believed he could just take it. The next morning, I drove to the storage facility on the edge of town. The one Mom had rented years ago, filled with old furniture and boxes she'd never quite unpacked from her own mother's estate. I found the unit, unlocked the heavy door, and stepped inside, the stale air thick with dust and forgotten memories. I walked past covered couches and stacks of old photo albums until I found it. A small, tarnishing metal lockbox tucked away in a corner, just as I remembered. It was heavy, and when I shook it, something rattled inside. I pulled it out, cradling its weight in my hands. "You took the wrong house," I whispered, my voice barely audible in the quiet storage unit. "You have no idea what you just started." The metal lockbox felt cold and heavy in my hands as I walked out of the storage unit, the door clanging shut behind me. It wasn't just a box. It was a promise. A promise to Mom, and a threat to Shane. He thought he'd gotten away with something, that my grief would make me a passive victim. He didn't count on me remembering. He didn't count on me being my mother's daughter. My first stop wasn't a lawyer, not yet. It was the county records office. I spent hours there, sifting through public documents, trying to make sense of what Shane had done. The clerk, a kindly older woman, patiently explained the process for obtaining death certificates, property records, and probate filings. What I found made my blood run cold. Mom, Zariah Hunt, had never finalized her will. She'd talked about it, even drafted something years ago, but it had never been signed, never notarized. It was just a stack of papers in a drawer, and because there was no valid will, Shane, as her only living sibling, had swooped in. He'd filed paperwork claiming to be the executor of her estate. And there it was, staring me in the face. A power of attorney document dated just 3 weeks after Mom's funeral. Her signature looked off. Not quite right. It was too neat, too precise for someone who had been so frail in her final days. This wasn't just opportunistic. It was outright fraud. That's when I knew I needed help. Not just any help, but someone who understood the legal labyrinth I was about to enter. Someone I could trust. My mind immediately went to Valerie Lowe. Valerie was 32 now, 5 years my senior, but we'd been inseparable as kids. She'd moved away for law school and we'd drifted, as friends sometimes do. But I remembered her fierce sense of justice, even back then. She'd always been the one to stand up to bullies on the playground. Now she was a probate attorney. Perfect. I called her office, half expecting to get an assistant. Instead, Valerie picked up herself. "Willow? Is that really you? It's been ages." Her voice was warm, familiar. "Hey, Val," I said, my voice a little shaky. "Yeah, it's me. Look, I wouldn't call unless it was important. I need your help." My uncle? He sold Mom's house. I laid out the whole story, the $14,000, Jasmine's Instagram posts, the forged POA. I could hear the shift in her tone as I spoke, the initial surprise turning into a quiet, simmering anger. "Shane Wallace, huh?" she finally said, a hard edge to her voice. "That man always was a snake. I remember him trying to pull some fast one on your mom when we were kids, something about a loan he never repaid. He's always been bad news." "Look, Willow, I'm specializing in estate law now. Bring me everything you've got. I'll do this. Not just for you, but honestly, just to see Shane lose." That was Valerie. She didn't ask for details about my grief or how I'd been. She just saw the injustice and wanted to fix it. It was exactly what I needed. While Valerie started digging into the legal side, I kept my own quiet surveillance going. Social media was a goldmine for people like Jasmine, and apparently for my cousin, Harmony Davis. Harmony, 45, Shane's daughter from a former marriage, had always been a piece of work. She was the kind of cousin who'd mock my clothes at family gatherings, who'd whisper about my mom behind her hand. I found her Facebook profile, public of course, and there it was, a string of posts, not directly naming me, but clearly aimed. Some people just can't let go of the past. Like, "It's just a house. Get over it. Emo cousin who couldn't let go. New beginnings. Fresh start. Bye, Felicia." Another one, a few weeks later. "So glad Dad finally cleared out that old place. It was just sitting there, collecting dust. Now it's got life. Some people just love to wallow, not us." Positive vibes. Moving on. Each post was a punch, but I didn't flinch. I didn't comment, didn't react. My goal wasn't to fight them online or even to argue with them. It was to take everything. To make them feel the loss, the way I had. Harmony's mocking just added fuel to the fire, solidifying my resolve. They thought I was weak, that I was just a sad, grieving girl. They were wrong. A few days later, an email popped up from Valerie. The subject line was, "Update, Zariah Hunt Estate." I clicked it open, my heart thumping. She'd found more than just the forged POA. She'd found something else. The last line of her email made me freeze. "By the way, your mom owned 2 properties." Not one. Your mom owned 2 properties, not one. Valerie's email stared back at me, the words echoing in my head. My mother, Zariah, had always been so private about her finances. I knew she was careful, but 2 properties? This was a complete shock. I immediately called Valerie. "What are you talking about, Val? 2 properties?" I asked, my voice a mix of confusion and a sudden sharp surge of hope. "Yeah, it's weird," she explained. "It's a small parcel of land, maybe an acre just outside the city limits. She bought it years ago, probably before you were even born. It's been sitting there, undeveloped. No structures, just raw land. It's not connected to the house property at all, totally separate deed. Shane didn't even list it in the probate paperwork he filed. He probably didn't know about it or just overlooked it because it wasn't a house. My mind raced. A small plot of land. Why would Mom own something like that? Here's the kicker, Valerie continued. I did some digging, and that little acre? It borders a massive new development. They're building luxury homes, a whole new community. That land, if it were rezoned, would be worth a fortune. Even as it is, it's sitting right next to prime real estate. It has huge hidden value. Hidden value. The words resonated with me. My mother, always so quiet, so unassuming, had left me more than I ever knew. More than Shane thought. This wasn't just about getting the house back anymore. This was about something bigger. So, it's still legally mine? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Yep, since there was no will and Shane only claimed the house in his fraudulent probate filing. This parcel of land was never transferred. It's technically still part of your mother's estate, and as her sole heir, it defaults to you. We just need to go through the proper probate channels for this property, which will be much simpler. A plan began to form in my mind, a slow, methodical burn. This wasn't just about getting even. This was about leverage. Val, I said, a new resolve in my voice. Do you know any forensic accountants? Someone who specializes in, say, undeclared assets, tax evasion? Valerie paused. Funny you ask. I have an old college acquaintance, Pablo Oliver. He's 36 now, brilliant with numbers, and he used to work for the IRS. He's a bit of a maverick, but he knows how to find things. Why? Because Shane Wallace isn't just a snake, I said, looking at the lockbox on my desk. He's a tax cheat, and I think this land might be the key to proving it. Valerie set up a meeting with Pablo a week later. He was exactly as she described, sharp, intense, with a quiet confidence that made you trust him instantly. I told him about the house, the $14,000, the forged POA, and then I showed him the deeds to the second property. So, you want me to look into your uncle's finances? Pablo asked, his gaze steady. What's in it for me? I don't work cheap. The land, I said, pointing to the deed. It's undeveloped, but it's valuable. If you help me expose Shane, I'll give you a percentage of whatever we get from this property once it's sold. It'll be a lot more than your usual fee, and it'll be clean. No messy clients, just a straightforward deal. Pablo's eyes narrowed, considering. A percentage, huh? Interesting. You're playing a long game, Willow. They started it, I said simply. I'm just changing the rules. He agreed. Within days, Pablo was a ghost in the system. He started with public records, business filings, and then moved on to more discreet channels. He quickly discovered Shane had 3 rental properties under his name, properties I knew nothing about. They were in different towns, managed by different companies. But the kicker was when Pablo cross-referenced them with Shane's income tax filings. He's declared 0 assets on his personal income tax for the last 5 years, Pablo reported, his voice flat. And the rental income he has declared? It barely covers the mortgages. It looks like he's running a shadow business, probably taking cash payments under the table or claiming massive fraudulent deductions. He's been funneling money somewhere. This is textbook tax fraud, Willow, and it's not small potatoes. Pablo then explained how tax liens worked. If a property owner failed to pay their property taxes, the county would put a lien on the property, which could then be purchased by investors. If the owner didn't pay up, the lien holder could eventually foreclose and take ownership. It was a slow, quiet, legal way to seize assets. We can start buying up the liens on Shane's properties, Pablo suggested. It's a public record, but it's not something he'd necessarily notice immediately unless he was checking constantly. It's a quiet way to put pressure on him, and it gives us leverage. Over the next few weeks, with Pablo's guidance and some of the money I had saved from my own job, I started buying up tax liens on Shane's rental properties. It was a strange feeling, like playing a silent, high-stakes chess game. Each purchase was a small, satisfying victory. One evening, as I was scrolling through Facebook, I saw a new post from Harmony. It was a rant, full of capital letters and angry emojis. "Can you believe this? Dad just got audited out of nowhere. The IRS is going through everything. Crazy. Some people just have to ruin things for everyone. IR sucks. Shark family drama. Unbelievable." I smiled. A slow, quiet, deeply satisfying smile. It was working. Harmony's Facebook rant about Shane's audit was the first real crack in their facade, and it felt good. Not just good, but right. It confirmed Pablo was doing his job, and that my quiet moves were having a real impact. It had been about 2 months since I first contacted Valerie, and in that time, my life had shifted from passive grief to active strategy. I was still Willow, but a sharper, more focused version. With the IRS audit looming over Shane and me quietly buying up liens on his rental properties, the pressure was mounting. But the house, my mother's house, was still occupied by Jasmine. That was the primary target. Valerie had been relentless in her research. She'd found a loophole, a small but significant detail that Shane and Jasmine had overlooked in their rush to steal the property. "Okay, so here's the deal," Valerie explained over the phone one evening, her voice buzzing with excitement. "Because Shane used a fraudulent power of attorney to transfer the deed, the original sale to Jasmine is technically invalid. It's a voidable transaction. On top of that, Jasmine, as the new owner, never properly filed for the required renovation permits, and she's been delinquent on the property taxes for the last quarter." I sat up straighter. Delinquent on taxes? But she just moved in 6 months ago. Exactly, Valerie confirmed. She probably thought she could just ride it out or that Shane would handle it. But the county doesn't care who's living there. They care who's on the deed and who's paying up. And because of the manipulated inheritance laws, specifically the fact that the house should have gone through proper probate as part of your mother's estate, not a fraudulent sale, and Jasmine's lack of notarized occupancy documents, we have a window. The county tax office has flagged the property for non-payment and lack of permits. It's a mess on their end. This was it, the opening I'd been waiting for. So what does that mean for me? It means we can submit a quiet purchase offer to the county tax office, Valerie said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Because the original sale was so flawed, and the property is now flagged for multiple violations, the county is looking to clear it up. We can essentially buy back the house through the county, at a much lower price than market value, but still significantly more than the $14,000 Shane sold it for. It's a steep legal price for you, but it's still a steal compared to what it's actually worth. It's not a foreclosure exactly, but it's a legal mechanism for the county to reclaim and resell a problematic property. It's completely above board on our end. It was expensive, a significant chunk of my savings, but it was the only way. It was buying back what was always mine. The process was quiet, deliberate. Valerie handled all the paperwork, filing the necessary documents with the county tax office. We didn't make a sound, didn't breathe a word to anyone. No public announcements, no social media posts. The less Shane and Jasmine knew, the better. 3 weeks later, a certified letter arrived at Jasmine's address. It wasn't from me, or from Valerie. It was from the county. A notice that the property at 123 Maple Drive, my mother's house, had been transferred due to a series of legal and tax irregularities. It stated that the new owner had taken possession, and Jasmine Barnes had 30 days to vacate the premises. I got a call from Valerie that afternoon. "It's done, Willow. The house is legally yours again. The deed was officially transferred this morning." A wave of relief, so profound it almost buckled my knees, washed over me. It was real. It was happening. I didn't post anything online. I didn't gloat. I simply waited. The next day, I was at my grocery store, picking up some essentials, when I saw Valerie. She was in the produce aisle, looking at avocados. I waved, and she smiled, but then her eyes darted to something behind me. I turned. Brad McCormick, the shady realtor, 38 years old, who had helped push the house sale through. I recognized him from the property records Valerie had pulled. He was standing a few aisles over, pretending to examine a carton of eggs, but his gaze was fixed on Valerie. He looked pale, his usual slick demeanor replaced with a nervous energy. Valerie walked over to me, her smile faltering. "Hey, Willow. Just got the call from the county. Everything's good." She leaned in closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Brad McCormick is here. He's been watching me." Just then, Brad seemed to make a decision. He walked quickly towards Valerie, his eyes flicking to me for a split second before focusing solely on her. He stopped just inches away, his voice low, urgent. "Valerie," he whispered, his eyes wide and a sheen of sweat on his forehead. "I know who she's working with. If this keeps going, we all go down." Brad McCormick's whispered threat in the grocery store didn't scare me. It energized me. It meant he knew. It meant they were feeling the heat. We all go down. That was the plan. Not just Shane, but everyone complicit. And now, with the house legally back in my name, it was time to stop being quiet. For months, I'd moved in the shadows, gathering evidence, pulling strings. Now, it was time to step into the light, but on my terms. I wasn't going to scream or yell. I was going to speak, calmly and clearly, and let the facts do the screaming for me. I decided to write an anonymous op-ed for the local paper. Valerie helped me craft it, making sure it was legally sound but still impactful. We focused on the broader issues: elder abuse, estate theft, and how easily vulnerable people could be exploited. I didn't name names, but I painted a picture that anyone in our small community who knew Shane Wallace would recognize. I wrote about how certain families treat daughters like ghosts and girlfriends like queens, a direct jab at Shane and Jasmine, and a subtle nod to Harmony's online taunts. I talked about the emotional toll, the betrayal, and the systemic loopholes that allowed such injustices to occur. The article ran online first, then in print a few days later. It hit a nerve. The comments section exploded. People shared their own stories of family disputes, of feeling helpless against opportunistic relatives. The local paper picked up on the traction and did a follow-up piece, interviewing a legal expert, not Valerie to keep her involvement discreet for now, about the complexities of probate law and the rise of estate fraud. While the article was making waves, Valerie and Pablo were connecting more dots. Brad's panicked whisper in the grocery store had been a tell. Pablo, with his IRS connections, started digging deeper into Brad McCormick's finances too. What they uncovered was a tangled web. "It's a full-blown real estate fraud ring, Willow," Pablo explained during a video call, his face grim. Brad wasn't just a realtor. He was the facilitator. He was doctoring signatures, backdating documents, and pushing through these quick, undervalued sales. Shane was just one of his clients, but a significant one. They were working together, exploiting estates where the deceased didn't have a clear will, or where the heirs were estranged or vulnerable. Valerie chimed in, "And Jasmine. She's not just Shane's girlfriend. She's been involved in some of these transactions too, acting as a straw buyer or helping to launder money through property flips. Her name is popping up on a few other suspicious deeds. This goes way beyond your mother's house." The IRS, already auditing Shane, now had a much bigger fish to fry. Pablo had provided them with enough preliminary evidence to launch a full-scale investigation into Brad, Shane, and their associates. The pressure was mounting, not just for Shane, but for everyone involved. Then, the inevitable happened. A few days after the op-ed went viral, a process server showed up at my apartment door. He handed me a thick envelope. Inside was a cease and desist letter from Jasmine Barnes's lawyer. It accused me of defamation, harassment, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. It demanded I remove the op-ed, stop all contact, and refrain from making any further statements about Jasmine or the property. I read the letter, then looked up at the process server, a small, knowing smile playing on my lips. "Are you serious?" I asked, a laugh bubbling up from deep inside me. It wasn't a polite laugh. It was a laugh of pure, unadulterated triumph. I took the letter, closed the door, and walked back to my kitchen, the paper crinkling in my hand. They were desperate. They were scared, and they were making mistakes. I sent a photo of the cease and desist letter to Valerie. Her reply was immediate. "Don't worry about it. It's a scare tactic. They're panicking." She was right. The next morning, my phone started buzzing. Not with calls, but with messages from friends and acquaintances. "Willow, have you seen this?" they asked. "It's everywhere." Someone had leaked Jasmine's personal photos. Not just the ones from my house, but a whole trove of them. Luxury bags, designer clothes, lavish vacations, photos that clearly contradicted her public persona and her financial situation as a supposed low-income buyer of my mother's house. There were also screenshots of what looked like fake tax write-offs, and even a few documents that hinted at stolen identities being used in other property transactions. The local reporter who had done the follow-up piece on estate fraud had gotten hold of them. The internet was having a field day. Jasmine's carefully curated online image was crumbling, replaced by a public narrative of greed and deception. The war had been declared, and I wasn't just changing the rules, I was rewriting the entire damn playbook. The leak of Jasmine's photos was the final push. The local reporter, now armed with a mountain of evidence from Pablo and Valerie, all carefully anonymized of course, ran a scathing exposé. It detailed the real estate fraud ring, the doctored documents, the undervalued sales, and the suspicious financial dealings. Shane and Brad were named as key players, and Jasmine was heavily implicated. The article didn't just go local. It got picked up by a few regional news outlets. The pressure became unbearable. The 30 days Jasmine had to vacate the house passed, and she hadn't moved. She probably thought she could ignore the county notice, or that her cease and desist letter would intimidate me. She was wrong on both counts. It was a Tuesday morning, crisp and clear. I arrived at my mother's house with a sheriff's deputy and Valerie. The deputy, a stern-faced woman in her late 40s, held the court order for eviction. My stomach churned, a mix of nerves and grim satisfaction. This was it, the culmination of months of quiet work. We walked up the familiar pathway to the front door. The rose bushes Mom had loved were gone, replaced by a patch of scraggly weeds. The house looked wrong, like a cheap imitation of itself. I knocked, hard. A few moments later, the door swung open. Jasmine stood there, her face pale, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and defiance. She was still wearing her expensive-looking loungewear, but the usual sparkle in her eyes was gone. "Jasmine Barnes?" the deputy asked, her voice flat and official. Jasmine nodded, her gaze darting between the deputy, Valerie, and me. Her eyes lingered on me, a flicker of hatred in their depths. "I'm Deputy Miller. I'm here to enforce a court-ordered eviction. This property has been legally transferred to Willow Hunt. You have been given 30 days to vacate. Since you have not complied, you are now required to leave the premises immediately." Jasmine's mouth opened, but no words came out. She looked like a trapped animal. But this is my house," she stammered finally. "No, it's not," I said, my voice steady, devoid of emotion. "It hasn't been your house for weeks." The deputy stepped forward. "Ma'am, I need you to gather your essential belongings and leave. If you don't comply, I will be forced to escort you." Jasmine's defiance crumbled. She glared at me one last time, then turned and stumbled back into the house. We could hear her frantically grabbing things, muttering to herself. 10 minutes later, she emerged, dragging a large suitcase and a designer handbag. Her face was tear-streaked, mascara running down her cheeks. She looked pathetic. She avoided my gaze, handing the keys to the deputy, who then handed them to me. The weight of them in my palm felt like a victory. As Jasmine was being escorted to a waiting car, a black SUV screeched to a halt in front of the house. The driver's side door flew open, and out stepped Uncle Shane Wallace, 45, looking disheveled and frantic. He was followed by Harmony Davis, 45, her face contorted in a mask of fury. "What the hell is going on here?" Shane roared, spotting the deputy and Jasmine. "Willow, what have you done?" Before he could take another step, another car, an unmarked police vehicle, pulled up behind his SUV. 2 plainclothes officers emerged. "Shane Wallace?" one of them asked, holding up a badge. "We have a warrant for your arrest, 2 counts of tax fraud and forgery." Shane's face went ashen. He tried to protest, to argue, but the officers were firm. They cuffed him, reading him his rights right there on the lawn of my mother's house. He looked at me, his eyes wide with disbelief and a dawning horror. Harmony, meanwhile, had rushed to Jasmine's side, trying to comfort her. When she saw Shane being led away, she spun on me, her face red with rage. You did this!" she shrieked, pointing a trembling finger. "You ruined everything! You ruined the whole family!" I looked at her, then at the house, then back at her. Her words, once designed to cut, now felt hollow. I reached into my bag and pulled out a worn, folded document. It was a copy of my mother's original deed to the house, the one she'd held for decades. Then I pulled out a small, faded photograph. Me, at 8 years old, sitting on the front lawn, a gap-toothed smile on my face, my arm around my mom. Finally, I held up a few pages from Mom's journal, tear-stained entries about her love for this house, her dreams for it, her hopes for me. "I didn't ruin it, Harmony," I said, my voice quiet but firm, cutting through her hysteria. "You sold it. Your father sold it. You mocked me for grieving it. This was never just a house. This was her." "And you sold her for nothing!" Harmony stared at the documents, her mouth agape, her fury momentarily replaced by shock. She had nothing to say. Shane, now in the back of the police car, was still yelling, but his words were muffled. Jasmine was sobbing quietly in the passenger seat of her own car, being driven away by a friend she'd called. Harmony just stood there, frozen, watching them go. I turned and walked to the front door, the keys feeling heavy and real in my hand. I unlocked it, the click echoing in the sudden silence. Later that evening, as I sat alone in the quiet, empty house, the front door creaked. A soft, hesitant knock followed. I walked to the door, my heart pounding, and peered through the peephole. Standing on my porch, disheveled, pale, and terrified, were Shane and Jasmine. They looked like ghosts. They looked like they had nowhere else to go. They looked like they were begging to come in. The knock at the door was soft, hesitant, almost apologetic. But the faces I saw through the peephole were anything but. Shane and Jasmine, standing on my porch looking utterly broken. Shane, 45, usually so slick and confident, was pale and disheveled, his eyes wide with a desperate plea. Jasmine, 27, her face blotchy from crying, looked utterly defeated. They were terrified. And they were begging to come in. A part of me wanted to slam the door, to leave them out there in the cold, just as they had left me. But that wasn't my plan. My plan was to make them witness it, to make them feel every bit of what they had taken and what they had lost. I opened the door, just enough to meet their eyes. "What do you want?" My voice was flat, devoid of warmth. Shane took a step forward, his hands clasped in front of him. "Willow, please, we need to talk. Things are bad." "The police, the IRS. Jasmine has nowhere to go. Can we just Come in? For a minute? Jasmine nodded frantically, tears welling up again. Please, Willow, we made a mistake. We're so sorry. Sorry. The word tasted like ash. I looked at them, truly looked at them. They weren't manipulative masterminds anymore. They were just two people facing the consequences of their actions, and they were terrified. Good. Fine, I said, opening the door wider. But you're not here to talk. You're here to listen. And to see. They shuffled inside, looking around nervously, as if expecting a trap. The house was still mostly empty, the furniture Jasmine hadn't taken gone, the walls bare. But I had been busy. Follow me, I said, leading them into the living room. The first thing they saw was the photo wall. Not the one Mom had, but a new one I'd created. Every printed screenshot of Jasmine's Instagram posts, blown up and framed. Jasmine posing in my bedroom, the pool party where my tire swing used to be, her flaunting luxury bags she'd bought with what should have been my inheritance. Each image was a fresh wound, now displayed for them to see. Jasmine gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Shane's eyes darted nervously from photo to photo. Remember these? I asked, my voice dangerously soft. You thought you were so clever, didn't you, Jasmine? Flaunting your new life, mocking my grief online. Every single one of these posts, I saw them. I remembered them. I moved on, leading them through the house. In the dining room, I'd set up a small table. On it, neatly organized, were scanned copies of Shane's fraudulent tax returns, the ones Pablo had uncovered, showing his undeclared assets and zero income. Next to them were printouts of the property deeds for his 3 rental properties, along with the liens I had purchased. Shane's jaw tightened. He tried to speak, but I cut him off. This is where you thought you were so smart, Shane. Hiding your money, cheating the system. You thought no one would notice. You thought I was too busy grieving to care. I walked them into the kitchen, the room where the smell of burnt meatloaf still lingered in my memory. The kitchen was different now. I had started to restore it. The cheap, sparkly backsplash Jasmine had installed was gone, replaced with simple white subway tiles, just like Mom had always wanted. On the windowsill, I'd placed a small collection of Mom's old spice jars, the ones I'd found in the lockbox, the same ones she used to reach for when she cooked. The air felt lighter, cleaner. But on the counter, next to the restored spice jars, I had placed a stack of printouts, Harmony's Facebook rants, her mocking posts about the emo cousin who couldn't let go. Harmony wasn't here, but her words were. She thought it was funny, didn't she, Shane? I said, my voice rising slightly. She thought it was hilarious that I was grieving, that I couldn't let go of my home, but she didn't know what she was laughing at. She was laughing at a daughter who just lost her mother and then had her home stolen by her own family. I turned to face them, standing in the center of the kitchen, the heart of the home. This is where she laughed at my meatloaf, I said, my voice thick with emotion, but my eyes dry. This is where we shared our last laugh, right here at this island. Remember that? No, you were never here. You never cared about her, not really, not enough to respect her memory or her home. I looked directly at Jasmine, her face a mask of misery. You'll never smile in this house again, I whispered, the words a cold, hard promise. Every corner of this place, every memory is tainted by what you did. You won't get to enjoy it, not ever. Jasmine broke down, a ragged sob tearing from her throat. She crumpled to the floor, burying her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Shane stood rooted to the spot, his face pale, his eyes wide with a terror that was finally, truly real. He couldn't even look at me. He just stared at the floor, defeated. I didn't flinch, not a muscle. Their tears, their fear, their brokenness. It was exactly what I had wanted. Jasmine's sobs echoed in the quiet kitchen, a raw, guttural sound that filled the space. Shane stood frozen, his face devoid of its usual cunning, replaced by a vacant stare. They were broken. Utterly, completely broken. I watched Jasmine for a long moment, her shoulders shaking, her designer clothes rumpled from her collapse. The satisfaction was there, a deep, resonant hum beneath my skin. But there was no joy in it. Not really. Just a quiet, cold sense of completion. "Get out," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, but it cut through the air like a knife. "Both of you." "Get out of my house." Shane finally stirred, his eyes finding mine. There was no defiance left, only a profound weariness. He put a hand on Jasmine's arm, pulling her gently to her feet. She didn't look at me, just stumbled out of the kitchen, Shane following close behind. I heard the front door open, then close with a soft click, and then silence. The days that followed were a blur of legal proceedings and quiet restoration. Shane, already released on bail after his initial arrest, was officially charged with multiple counts of tax fraud and forgery. The evidence Pablo had meticulously gathered, combined with Valerie's legal expertise regarding the fraudulent power of attorney and Brad McCormick's involvement in the wider real estate fraud ring, was overwhelming. The IRS investigation expanded, pulling in more people, unraveling more of their illicit dealings. Brad, the shady realtor, was also facing serious charges. Harmony, my cousin, vanished from social media. Her public rants ceased, her carefully curated online life going dark. I heard through the grapevine that she was dealing with the fallout of her father's legal troubles and the public shame of the news reports. She had lost her audience, her platform for mockery, and that, in itself, felt like a fitting consequence. Jasmine, facing a mountain of evidence regarding her complicity in the property transactions and the leaked photos hinting at identity theft, took a plea deal. She disappeared from the public eye, her name fading from the news cycles. I didn't know where she went, and I didn't care. Her world had imploded, and that was enough. Valerie called me a week after the eviction. "Willow, we could press charges against Jasmine for identity theft." "Pablo found some pretty solid links in those leaked photos." I paused, looking around the kitchen, now truly mine. The smell of fresh paint was starting to replace the lingering scent of burnt meatloaf. "No," I said firmly. "They lost everything that mattered. Their reputation, their freedom, their sense of security. Shane's facing jail time. Jasmine's a pariah. Harmony's silenced. I won't waste another breath on them." Valerie was quiet for a moment. "Are you sure?" "You've been through a lot." "I'm sure," I replied. "I got back what was mine, and they got what they deserved. That's enough." The house slowly transformed. I stripped away all traces of Jasmine, painting over the garish colors, replacing the cheap fixtures. I restored Mom's rose garden, planting new bushes in the same spots. I found Mom's old photo albums in the storage unit and started rebuilding the family photo wall. But this time, it was just photos of Mom and me, and a few of her with her parents. It was a home again, not a monument to betrayal. A few weeks later, on a clear afternoon, I stood on the front porch, a small polished brass plaque in my hand. I carefully screwed it into the wall just above the front door, right where the house number used to be. The inscription was simple, elegant. Zariah's house. That evening, as dusk settled, casting long shadows across the lawn, I sat on the front steps, a mug of chamomile tea warming my hands. The air was cool, carrying the scent of newly turned earth from the garden. The house behind me felt solid, real, finally at peace. They had knocked once, desperate and terrified. Fate, it seemed, had knocked louder. And I, Willow, had simply opened the door. A few days later, an envelope arrived in the mail. No return address, no stamp, just my name handwritten on the front. It looked like it had been slipped directly into my mailbox. I opened it carefully. Inside, folded neatly, was a faded, handwritten recipe card. My mother's familiar cursive filled the page, Zariah's famous meatloaf, and underneath the ingredients a single stark line, written in a different hand, one I didn't recognize. Revenge doesn't heal, but sometimes it feeds.